management and to communications, various sensors on board. Some of us are developing and enforcing these standards, and some of us are adopting and ensuring the standards. Through this conference, we are bringing both of them plus academic community together to discuss, understand, and create awareness about these standards. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome you all to the second edition of Aerostandards Conference organized by SAE Aerospace Forum in collaboration with SAE International. Before I invite Ravi Shankar Mysore to give inaugural address, let me briefly introduce Ravi. Ravi Shankar Mysore is Chair SAE Aerospace Forum and an independent consultant with over 32 years of experience in engineering in India. He recently served as Vice President Engineering, Global Engineering and Technology Center, Collins Aerospace, India, for 13 years. The center grew by multifold under Ravi's leadership. Ravi is one of the founding members of NASSCOM Engineering Services Forum and served on the forum from 2005 to 2007. He is a member of SAE India since 2016 and is the chair for SAE India Aerospace Forum. Ravi, with that, over to you for inaugural address.
Thank you, Satish. Thanks for the kind introduction. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's my privilege to deliver the inaugural address for the Aerostandards Workshop 2022. I'm sure many of you have been associated with SAE India or have heard of SAE India. SAE India, as you know, is a technical society which is closely associated with SAE International and serves the mobility industry with a strong presence in automotive, aerospace, and off-highway sectors. We have over 3,300 professionals from 150 industries and 50,000 students and 1,500 faculty members from more than 400 collegiate clubs as members of SAE India. With a view to provide strong focus to different industry segments, industry-specific forums have been established under SAE India. We have aerospace, automotive, and off-highway forums working closely with all the regional sections of SAE India. SAE India Aerospace Forum, as mentioned by Satish, was established in 2009 and has been conducting seminars, conferences, workshops, professional development programs for professionals and students with a focus on aerospace. We recently concluded Aerothon 2022, a design contest for students where they designed, built, and demonstrated unmanned aircraft systems. We had over 500 students, over 50 colleges participating in this event across India. In continuation with the focus that we have on unmanned aircraft systems, we're now conducting an Aerostandards Workshop, again with the focus on the standards that are being developed in the area of unmanned aircraft systems. Why aerospace standards? This is actually driven by multiple reasons. For one, today in India, we have a large community of aerospace professionals. This is led by significant growth of engineering and technology centers of global companies. In fact, the list is quite long, and all the major aerospace companies, such as Boeing, Airbus, GE, Honeywell, Collins, Thales, Moog, Safran, Bombardier, Rolls-Royce, have a significant presence in India. We have a large number of professionals working in the domain of aerospace in India today. Not only that, we also have several large engineering service providers like TCS, Infosys, HCL, etc., working in the area of global companies. In the recent past, we've seen significant focus on unmanned aircraft systems. In fact, the future of aerospace industry in the near future is going to be unmanned aircraft systems. The focus on this is so high that it calls for significant efforts in developing standards which will help improve quality, safety, and interoperability. So with this view in perspective, we have chosen today's main theme of our Aerostandards Workshop as unmanned aircraft systems. In addition to that, we're also going to provide an overview of various activities of SAE International in the area of standards. And also, we want to ensure that more and more engineers from India participate in development of standards which are going to be used at an international level. So we're going to provide some information on that as well in today's workshop. And I hope all of you will benefit significantly from this workshop. This workshop covers professionals, academia, and students, while some of the recent conferences that we held was either focused on professionals or students. This is something that is very apt and applicable to all the people across industry and academia. So with this, I welcome all of you to this workshop and hope that this will be a very fruitful and beneficial. Thank you very much. Over to you, Satish.
Thank you, Ravi. Thank you for providing the context and the brief history behind this conference and why did we choose, to have this workshop this time. Now I invite Mr. Venkatraj K, who is a DDG, Deputy Director General of SAE India, to deliver a message from SAE. Venki, over to you.
Thank you. Respected Chair, Aerospace Forum, Ravi Shankar Mysore, Dr. GVV Ravikumar, my dear Aerospace Forum members, I can always, I already see some seniors from aerospace industry. Good evening. It's my pleasure to deliver the message on behalf of the new president, Mr. C.V. Raman, who has taken over as President SAE India since yesterday. He is the CTO of Maruti Suzuki India Limited for next 2 years. The new managing committee, aka Board of Directors, have taken over. Ladies and gentlemen, the idea of conducting such workshop with the help of Aerospace Forum is to invite all the stakeholders of aerospace industry from India to participate in joint standards development. We would like to actually migrate from the conferences to student programs to the key aspect of aerospace industry, the aerospace standards. In our opinion, ladies and gentlemen, the use of aerospace standards should result in improved quality, cost, delivery, performance through reduction or elimination of organization unique requirements or effective implementation of these standards result in quality management system and wider application of good practice. SAE is known for the standards. We build standards for the mobility industry. Not very surprisingly, SAE carries over 7,800 active documents, over 180 technical committees, and the work in progress is about over 1,300 documents with 5 steering groups. That's massive number. Not many people, even in aerospace industry, know that SAE's largest collection or pool of standards is in the aerospace industry. It is combinedly developed by over 11,000 participants in several countries and multi-layers of stakeholders, academicians, research agencies, the OEMs, suppliers, testing agencies. I think it's a congregation of all the standard stakeholders, whoever is involved. What we want to do in the coming years, ladies and gentlemen, is to involve various stakeholders, not only the OEMs and research agencies, also the allied stakeholders, the software partners, centers of excellence, and many others. And if you look at the data, out of the 152 innovation centers, sometimes they're called centers of excellence, sometimes they're called innovation centers, across 8 different verticals, according to Government of India, over 62% of these centers are based in and around Bangalore. And almost all of these centers, the global R&D, global innovation centers of aerospace majors, are in India. So we would like to expand the participation of all of you in jointly developing aerospace standards, which will do good for our industry, aerospace industry. SA India caters to 3 main verticals: the automobile, aerospace, and off-highway, mainly tractors and ground vehicle equipment, of which aerospace forms a very important vertical for SA India. A little over a decade back, we started this with a humble beginning of a conference, and then we grew to aero show aligned conferences, and then we slowly launched student competitions to involve student and academia. Now we are moving over to the important leg of aerospace, which is standard setting. Especially today, this edition of Aerospace Standards Workshop, Aerostand Workshop, focuses on UAS, like Mr. Ravi said, and this is going to be the future. So we are actually touching in today's workshop some of the trending technologies like blockchain. Also, you will see the teaser of what is going to come out of India as a standard for the world. I'll keep that secret for Dr. Ravi Kumar to reveal. But we are, as a team, working together on some of the serious standard projects for not only India, for the world. And here is an invitation for you to be part of the technocrats team who can work together for the use of good practice for the industry. So I would like to stop here by inviting you to actively participate in all our programs. Like Mr. Ravi said, I think our participation of companies have also improved year on year, starting from HAL Management Academy to drone associations to MRO associations to AESI and the Ministry of Civil Aviation. Slowly, we are touching all the stakeholders, and we are indeed very, very happy to move this flywheel a few yards every month. Thank you. Jai Hind. Over to you, Satish.
Thank you, Venki, for the open invitation to the community to contribute to the standards and also sharing the growth plans of SAE in the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's move on. We have next speaker, David Alexander. Mr. David Alexander, he's the Director of Aerospace Standards, SAE International. David couldn't join in person today to deliver his message, but we have a video bite. Before asking SAE office to play the video bite, let me just quickly introduce. So David Alexander has been with SAE International and its affiliates for over 17 years. In the current role, Alexander is responsible globally for the strategy and operations of SAE Aerospace and systems management standards. That includes standardization in the diverse areas like artificial intelligence, electric aircraft, additive manufacturing, human factors, and quality. That SAE office, Vijay, are you ready to play the video?
Yes, sir. We'll play the video.
Go ahead.
Not able to hear the voice.
We are not getting voice, Vijay.
Hello to my friends at SAE India. I'm sorry that I can't join you at the time, but I'm very grateful for the opportunity to provide some scene setting from the SAE Aerospace Standards Programme for your event. So, what is SAE? As many of you know, SAE is many things. One of the great things about SAE is that it's a place to meet, to connect, to learn, to network, to influence, and together for the industry and the wider stakeholder community to advance. And we do this through standards. We have over 11,000 participants across 180 different technical committees who maintain over 7,800 active documents. That's standards, recommended practices, information reports, and material specifications. And because the industry is very dynamic, and particularly at the moment through new technologies and new regulatory approaches, we've had 25 new committees and steering groups just since 2017. And at any given time, we have around 1,300 works in progress, new standards and updates to existing documents. And while we are very future facing, I also want to provide some context through a history lesson. As you know, SAE is a historic society founded in 1905, our first standard in the ground vehicle area in 1912. But today we have almost 10,000 active standards. Now these have traditionally been very specialized for the application, for the aircraft, for the car, for the bus, for the tractor, etc. We've had common procedures, but hitherto parallel communities. However, now is the time for us to work more closely together across the industries. And so in 2022, we've really focused on those cross-sector activities. So we've developed a framework and a tracking tool that we have in use to track this collaboration. And we looked at defining progress through these 5 Pathfinder topics: electrification, hydrogen, cyber-physical security, artificial intelligence and machine learning, and additive manufacturing. And so we worked with our committees in aerospace, our committees in ground vehicle, and we looked to leverage the collaboration, to leverage the existing information in aerospace, the existing information in automotive, to together provide a greater baseline and a framework for innovation in these great sectors, and looking to the future so these sectors can advance more quickly together. So we're looking at things more from a technology-centric perspective rather than a sector-centric perspective. And you see there the Elite 10, the 9 target technologies and workforce development. So we're really looking at these across the different industries that SAE serves. And indeed, whether it's standards, whether it's EDGE reports, books, technical papers, journal articles, and so on, you'll see on the right there's a great progression of content that's been developed in these new technologies. Naturally, electrification, where we have electric cars running today, starting to have electric aircraft take to the skies, we have a lot of content. And quantum computing, however, a more nascent technology working out its applications in the mobility sectors, we have relatively few. But these are all coming, and they're being developed through standards and by some of you, our experts across the SAE program. And I mentioned that because we do have significant participation from India working on the SAE Aerospace Standards Program. So we have 72 individual participants from India on 28 SAE committees, and that's voting members and liaisons, not counting the mailing list members. So because some people work on many committees, the total for this is 128. And those 7 voting members are in the G31 Electronic Transactions for Aerospace Committee, our HM1 IVHM Committee, which, as you know, has met previously in Bangalore, and the AMS Multi-Metals Committees. And there are 119 liaison members. we would like to grow this, and we want to work with you to increase the participation across the SAE committees where there's technical topics, where there's interest and expertise in India, which we know that there is. And here are some organisations who are involved in the SAE technical committees from India. I won't read these down, but you'll have these slides to look at them. And again, we want your help in growing this list. A couple of things that I did want to mention. So partnerships, this year we signed an agreement, an MOU with our long-standing partner, the IEQG, the International Aerospace Quality Group. I know AS9100 is very prevalent in India. And so SAE is now working with IEQG as the single SDO for the AS91XX standards. Furthermore, and I know new technologies are of great interest to you, when we look at the urban air mobility, the advanced air mobility arena, we have a lot of different technical committees who are working in different aspects of these. In some cases, developing brand new standards, in some cases, adapting standards for new models, new technologies, new uses. And these are in charging, they're in electric actuation, they're looking at artificial intelligence and machine learning, autonomy, energy storage, the noise effects, de-icing, and so on. So there's a lot of work going across in our existing committees on these new technologies. And with that, I wish you all the best for a very, very successful event. And I look forward to engaging with you very soon, and again, growing that influence and participation from India in SAE standards. Thank you.
Thanks to Mr. David Alexander for taking time out from his busy schedule and sharing his message to all of us. Before we get deeper into today's agenda, I invite Dr. Ravikumar GVV to walk us through the program overview for today. What is in store for us for next probably 2.5 to 3 hours. Before I invite Dr. Ravi, let me briefly introduce. Dr. Ravikumar GVV is Vice President and Head Advanced Engineering Group of Engineering Services at Infosys, and he is the co-chair for Aerostandards 2022. He has led many innovation and applied research projects over the last 25 years, and he has published over 50 plus technical papers and 5 patents on his name. Ravi actively involved in various initiatives of the World Economic Forum, Fourth Industrial Revolution Technologies in Production. Ravi is the chair of G31 and member of HM1 technical committees of SAE International. Ravi, over to you to walk us through the program today.
Thank you, Satish. First of all, good evening to you all. Good to see good number of people joining in. We take these opportunities to thank you for being here. So let me walk you through the program, the technical program that we have planned for today. So our objective is essentially to provide you an overview of the global drone standardization activities. We will start with an overview of SAE International US activities by David Franks, and he is going to give you a kind of good overview on the work that SAE International is doing on the US side. This will be followed by a presentation on ANSI US standardization progress and updates by Ritesh from FAA, who is closely working with ANSI. Subsequently, we will have an overview of the blockchain for US. In fact, this is the work that is currently being done under the umbrella of Aerospace Information Report, AIR 7356, Opportunities, Challenges, and Requirements for Use of Blockchain in Unmanned Aircraft Systems operating below 400 feet above the ground level for commercial use. Okay, so we are going to give you a kind of teaser of of this particular document, which has been passed through the ballot and currently in the Aerospace Council approval and ballot. Subsequently, we will have 10 minutes break. Post the break, we are going to have an interesting panel discussion on the US standardization and certification needs and challenges in India from leading experts from Indian UAV and drone space. Okay, and especially the way we have planned for this particular panel discussion is we have a leading expert from Drone Federation of India, Mr. Smith Shah, is going to moderate this particular panel. Then we have two leading industrial representation, one from Arrow Unmanned Systems and the other from the Garuda Aerospace. Mr. Vipul and Shashwat Jain are going to be part of that, that panel. And then we have Mr. Sharma from QCI, which does a lot of the standardization activities, and Professor S.N. Wonkar from Indian Institute of Science, who is closely associated with BIS. Okay, they are going to lead that particular panel. So that will give you a kind of a good summary about the US standardization and certification activities in India and how they are connected with the global standards bodies and other representation. Okay. Followed by that, we are going to have a presentation from Dr. Ravi Rajamani, who is a fellow of SAE, on how you can contribute to aerospace standards development. Dr. Ravi Rajamani has been one of our greatest mentors on aerospace standards development from SAE and has been supporting us for quite a long time. So it's good to hear from him how each one of you can participate in this particular standards development. As David Alexander mentioned, close to around 128 people are associated with the standards development. Out of that, 7+ people are the real voting members. Looking at the size and scale of the aerospace community that we have today in India, we need to have more and more participation. That will help us understand the industry nuances and also improve our competency and capability and contribute back to the aerospace industry. Okay? So that's the main aim here. So you're going to hear from Dr. Ravi Rajamani on that. Then subsequently, we will have a vote of thanks from our colleague Shripati. Okay, so that's the plan that we have put together for today's workshop. Thank you for attending and look forward for your active participation. Over to you, Satish.
Thank you, Dr. Ravi. Nicely packed agenda to keep all of us busy for next few hours and interesting, line of talks. So let's move on to the first talk for today's conference is by Mr. David Franks, who is a standard specialist engineer of aerospace at SAE International. David Franks has an interesting career over 10 years in many parts of the aviation world. At US Airways and American Airlines, he performed runway, takeoff, obstacle, and various other, sorry, not runway, takeoff, obstacle, and various other performance analysis for the airlines. While working for an aircraft simulator company, he created aerodynamic flight models for multiple aircraft and helicopters. Currently, David works in the aerospace standards team at SAE International, focused on advanced air mobility to help build consensus solutions that move the mobility industry forward. So welcome, David, and over to you.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you for the introduction and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you all today. It's exciting. I know David Alexander just spoke as well. I am underneath his team here on the aerospace standards team, and I'm in a smaller business development unit underneath Jonathan Archer, and our direct purpose is, of course, to develop standards, go out in industry, go out in the world, and help propel our standards programs forwards. I specifically and targeted to the AAM world. So I'm excited to walk through presentation today. I'll start that now, and I'll walk through what we've seen out in the world so far, and really where our standards programs are helping to develop and push the industry forward. Perfect. All right, so is that sharing okay?
Yes, we can see your slides.
Okay, fantastic. So here we are, standards to enable UAM and AAM. Now, of course, there's a lot of terminology out in the world, and that's a lot of the work kind of we're doing is we want to rein in this term so that there's a concrete and uniform example of what we're working on. AAM, I think, is the global term, of course, advanced air mobility. We have UAM, urban air mobility, which really dictates that intra-city Uber-like experience with the air taxis, typically eVTOLs at this time. Of course, I think as the industry progresses and moves on, and as we've seen more recently too, at least in the United States, with the investments from the major airlines into the AAM world as well, it's going to move into more of what they deem RAM, which is going to be the regional air mobility, more of that city-to-city connection. As well as progressing into larger and larger distances. So it's an exciting field. As you can see here, and I know David Alexander spoke on a lot of these key technologies that SAE strives to do, but a lot of these, of course, are interwoven into the AAM world, and a lot of these technologies being driven by the AAM world in the industry as well. So it's exciting to be a part of these great technologies. And I'm going to walk through a quick baseline on SAE and our focuses, and then I'm going to walk through the airspace standards, the specific committees that are working on AAM, the work in progress, which is the latest activities that were going on, as well as some of the more exciting newly published documents as well. So I know David gave us a nice brief overview of SAE. Our mission, of course, is to strive to be a leader in connecting professionals around the world to come together and improve mobility solutions. And these keys are really to give those industries and those people a neutral forum where professionals can come together to work together and address the collective problems they face. As David Alexander spoke about, India has great participation. The region is fantastic. And of course, a lot of the people here today already understand that and see the value in the forum that we provide to progress the industry forward. So a particular focus that we've been working towards is to create the stronger links between our standards and certification. Of course, I think that the number one step for a lot of the AAM OEMs, of course, is to get that certification route. So what they need, especially with more and more performance-based requirements with this new technology, some of the regulators are moving towards these requirements that are based on performance, that they need to utilize these consensus-based standards that we're capable of helping the industry produce, that they detail these high-level means of compliance, or termed MOCs. So we really look to our steering groups and our system level groups, which sit atop our committees, and we look to them to create these roadmaps and guidance that come down and make sure that we're on track to produce exactly what the industry is needed. Of course, we're in constant cooperation with STOs and regulators around the world. Working with other STOs not only prevents duplicate work, which of course with everybody here in the forum that participates with SAE knows it's no joy to see to be involved in other STOs as well and see similar work going on at the same time. It doesn't help us, and it certainly doesn't help the industry move forward. So what we do is we have active collaboration and cooperation with multiple committees around the world. That includes EuroK, IEEE, all the regulators, FAA, EASA, other STOs like ASTM, RTCA, and higher level international organizations, including ICAO and others. So what the scope of communication and involvement with the regulators is, it's a great two-way exchange. So they get industry perspectives and needs, they can reach the regulators, and the regulators' goals and developing requirements can help inform both industry and standards. And a lot of the success we've seen, especially when forming new committees or new efforts, even new documentation, is that we can get the regulators on board, industry tends to follow. So again, it's a great tool that SAE provides to both industry and regulators for that forum where they can both come and speak a little more openly and make sure that they understand each other. So everyone involved in AAM understands the challenge in certifying these vehicles, involving the FAA and EASA and other regulators around the world. And this helps bring that cohesive roadmaps and solutions to bear. We hear it over and over again out in the conferences and speaking with the regulators and especially with the OEMs in the AAM. And they use the term, they want consensus standards and they want them more clearly wrought out across the industry, right? They don't want ASTM and SAE to develop different standards, especially for different regions as well. So both globally and across STOs, those OEMs are looking for these unified standards that present one clear path to certification first, and then onwards towards producing the additional technology and supporting their operations as they're out there in the world. So a lot of technology being used and developed for AAM is also present in the advancing ground vehicle and automotive world. Self-driving cars, hydrogen-powered buses, electrification, AI, public acceptance, just a few examples of this crossover in the tech. And that's really a strength of SAE as we have these two standards programs, right? We have aerospace and we have the automotive and the ground vehicle sectors. And they could both benefit from each other's successes. A lot of, especially hydrogen is a great example. Hydrogen buses have been driving around for years now, as well as electrification with charging ports, as well as that industry being advanced on the ground for years. There's a lot that the aerospace and the AAM world can learn, and that's a strength for SAE. And what we're striving to do is to connect those two industry groups together, so that existing tech and standards can be pushed over to the aerospace side for either quick adoption or maybe slight modification to make it work exactly with AAM and to prevent, again, duplicate work and speed it up to an eventual standards publication so that, again, we produce those standards more quickly to help advance those industries move forward. So the driving factor for AAM is to improve aviation's impact on the environment, of course. And we hear that again over and over out in industry, talking to the OEMs and as well as the supply chain makers, as well as the regulators and the city environments and the politicians and the people that are providing some of the funding and things as well. If it's not sustainable, then they don't want it. The investment isn't there. The industry is, of course, driven extremely by the environmental concerns. So aviation alone accounts for around 2% or more of global emissions. And although we're not a major contributor there at 2%, the industry at large is working to reduce those emissions down to as low as possible. So for example, we support multiple efforts in that realm, not alone with just base standards activities in our committees, but also supporting ACAR, REACH in Europe, ICAO's targets, and other key initiatives around the world. I know David Alexander already went over this chart, so I'll just briefly, say we have over 180 plus committees, thousands and thousands of individuals, including, you all here today around the world. And we had nearly 700 standards published in 2021. And I believe we're on pace to achieve that and more this year as well. SAE priority topics for the year. We set out many priorities, which of course involve AAM. They include advanced materials and manufacturing for VTOL, digital and data steering group, a joint effort with EuroK on artificial intelligence, our modeling and simulation and training group, that's G35, as well as, which is very exciting, a new supersonic steering group. So even though I don't think a lot of VTOLs are planning to go supersonic, it's another part of this new wave of aviation that's exciting to be a part of. So again, here's a brief summary, a very nice pictorial on the different groups. And I'm going to go into some further detail here on exactly what some of the groups are that are affecting AAM, so specifically their works in progress and the newly published works. So we'll start with our E40 committee, that's electrified propulsion. And they've worked here, and what I'm showing here is a bit of a roadmap, which is a key tool that we guide some of our committees to in their initial setting, as well as what we look to from our systems group, our steering group, is to produce these roadmaps. So here they've worked to review their collective needs, and they judge them against their importance and requests from the industry versus the time that we needed in the industry. So Up in the far right, you'll see the most important and most needed topics involve certification and compliance, of course, right? Before anything, these things need to be certified and compliant with local regulations as well. And these are ever-evolving topics, but these roadmaps are the key to make sure that we weigh the relevance of what they're after and make sure that we utilize the best resources at hand. So E40, again, it has two newly published documents that have come out this summer. We have an ARP and an AIR 8676, which is a nice foundational nomenclature and definitions, as well as AIR 8678, which is an architecture examples for electrified propulsion aircraft. So these are both foundational documents, and it's a great starting point. A lot of times with new committees and new technological topics, it's important that these taxonomy, verbiage, and wording are all worked out and defined clearly, so that the committee itself, as well as industry, all move forward speaking clearly and using the same terminology, which is important that they all understand each other moving forward. They align the terminology, and it's of course a baseline foundation for consistent communication and these future developments. It's a very active committee. We see a lot of participation from a lot of the OEMs across the AAM world. I believe it's currently chaired by a gentleman from Lilium, the German OEM. They're now focusing on safety, endurance testing, and considerations for ground support operations. So with the electrification of these aircraft, especially moving to high voltage, maintaining these aircraft, and even refueling in whatever sense that may take with the different versions of the electric aircraft, ground handling of these high voltage battery systems and engines becomes a training issue and a knowledge issue. So they've moved on to work with that. And we also coordinate this group with EuroK and ASTM. So again, speaking of high voltage, we have our AE10 high voltage committee, which is of course focused on the more intricate versions and details of that AE10. So with the use of the new and more powerful forms of electric propulsion in the aviation comes the needs for these higher power voltage. So these new challenges include propulsion systems, wiring, installation, safety, and charging. And that is our AE10 high voltage committee. So they've formed 6 subcommittees over what they've deemed the most important kind of subtopics: systems, energy storage, EWIS, equipment and the device itself, user safety, as well as infrastructure. So a lot of their key documents I have listed here. We of course started with definitions, and that's our aircraft electrical voltage level definitions. We have impact on high voltage on wiring. Both of those have been published, and we have a third document here which is close to finalization, and that's aircraft high voltage DC power quality standard. So along with electrification, hydrogen and fuel cell technology is also developing closely with AAM as another alternative to traditional fuels. With battery technology's current weight to energy ratios, hydrogen is poised to have a great impact at longer distances. I think as the industry matures and the technology is accepted and the public and operations begin, the electrification, I think, will run out of range a little bit, and the industry is looking, especially with the larger aircraft types, towards hydrogen. So hydrogen presents several challenges, both on the aircraft as well as the infrastructure to support it. So our AE7F committee is working with EuroK, Working Group 80, to help advance these technologies and help solve these problems. They have 3 published standards, I think, that are key documents that they've used as a foundation. And they also have some newer work that's in progress, which is liquid hydrogen storage for aviation and gaseous hydrogen storage for aviation. So again, when using hydrogen, that's the 2 main choices so far. Both prevent different challenges, including temperature regulation and storage and different pressure ranges. It's exciting to see all the different new designs from the UAM and AAM realm. Some of these designs are pushing the bounds on structures and materials to save weight and increase performance. To accomplish this, new manufacturing techniques, new materials, and new uses for existing products abound. SAE has multiple committees and subcommittees established that are working on some of the key aspects, such as additive manufacturing, composite repair, polymer matrix composites, really trying to serve the number of needs that these, again, especially with the smaller eVTOLs and these initial rounds of OEMs are really creating these unique vehicles with unique design challenges. And of course, consistent everywhere with aviation is the drive to get that weight down as much as possible to optimize performance. A great example here is the VTOL seats committee that we already have. And this is a great example of where we took existing publication in a standard that was written, of course, well before AAM realm, but was quickly adapted to help and serve the need of the AAM realm. So they had a kickoff meeting held in just July of 2021 with great representation from regulators, EASA, FAA, the UK CAA, as well as AAM industry members, Wisk, Lilium, Safran, Honda, Bell, Collins, and then they did produce that. And it says they're balloted to council, but it has been published, AS 6849, which is performance standards for passenger and crew seats, specifically for advanced air mobility aircraft. So again, I'd like to bring this up as a great example of where we took existing standards. We took it to the regulators and we involved the regulators and the OEMs and the industry itself. And we said, we have an existing standard. Can we quickly adapt that to what you need and really cut the time down from, of course, starting a document from scratch? A paramount concern for everyone involved in AM is, of course, safety. New designs, new technology, flying new mission protocols requires that care is taken to safely design, test, and operate these aircraft. So the SAE S18 Aircraft and Systems Development and Safety Assessment Committee develops and maintains guidelines for processes, methods, and tools to accomplish the development and safety assessments of aircraft, systems, and related equipment. The group is dedicated to creating, preparing, and maintaining all the relevant specifications, standards, and information material for effective commercial aircraft development and safety activity management. Another exciting aspect to the future of AAM is the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning in these aircraft. The promise of UAM and AAM to deliver a safe, equitable, and publicly accepted new era of aviation will require a fully integrated airspace with thousands of these new aircraft operating in various mission profiles without a traditional pilot on board. Artificial intelligence, of course, will be a pivotal in making this happen. And that is exactly what SAE's G34 committee focuses on. It was formed jointly with EuroK. Their first standard was published in 2021. And with a wide range of global participation throughout the world's aerospace industry, this group is positioned to help UAM and AAM develop and deploy AI safely and successfully. And it's a key topic you see from the AAM world and the OEMs. Of course, realistically, these operations will start as 1 or 2 flights with limited operations and ranges. But as their business models dictate in the longer term, they're all driving towards fully autonomous, fully integrated into the airspace, operating without pilots, or perhaps a new terminology, person in control from a remote ground station or dispatch. Another key group that we have here is SAE's G35, which is modeling, simulation, and training. A key to the AAM success will be the use of new, efficient, and safe methods for training, pilot crew certification, and the use of simulation. Simulation in particular is used in model development, flight testing, and training, with new technologies emerging and the role of the pilot and crew changing with some of these new aircraft designs, if not all of them. There's a need to develop guidance on best practices for modeling, simulation, and training. So our G35 committee was established to bring industry together and solve these problems and provide that guidance to the AAM ecosystem, passenger cargo aircraft OEMs, flight simulation training device manufacturers, as well as everyone involved with crew certification. So they've broken off into 3 subcommittees. We have G35A, B, and C, both focused on key topic areas: aircraft system development, simulation, and human trainings. to multiple standards in progress right now. They have listed here taxonomy, again, another foundational document clearly defining the technologies at hand, pilot training and qualifications specific, again, to VTOL capable aircraft, technology standards for VTOL capable aircraft training devices to support evaluation, as well as modeling and simulation to support certification of aircraft and avionics. Again, that first step to a lot of these key technologies, especially new to the regulators, is getting them certified, involving them into these committees and these processes early is key to keeping that industry aligned and moving forward so that they don't get too far ahead without complying with the regulators. So along with safety, noise is a primary factor in public acceptance with these new aircraft. The promise of thousands of new aircraft flying in urban, suburban areas brings the concern of how new noise profiles will affect the population around where UAM, AAM will operate. Almost everyone knows the sound of a loud helicopter beating its way through the air, or even of a small quadcopter buzzing and whirring over our heads. The different configurations of rotors, of loading on the different propeller sizes and motors of these new aircraft will have to fall into an acceptable level of noise, depending on how and where they operate. Again, speaking to a lot of the regulators, and really at our level, at least in the United States, we have the city authorities where these will operate, and as almost their primary concern, of course, besides safety, is where will these operate, how loud will they be, and will they be able to operate below, of course, current noise thresholds, be able to operate without the public kind of rejecting the level of noise that they bring as a nuisance to the areas of where the vertiport may be, or additionally to added noise to existing airport infrastructures. So what we have is SAE's A21, and it's an established committee already, and that focuses on aircraft noise measurements and aviation emissions. And of course, noise can be viewed as an emission. And some revisions to existing documents have already been made to prepare for AAM, and there are other relevant works in progress as well. That work in progress example is monitoring aircraft noise and operations in the vicinity of airports. That describes system description, acquisition, as well as operations. So again, I view this as a key committee. The industry itself, of course, has identified noise as really a key requirement to allow them to operate. So I know work is going to continue here in our A21 committee on noise for the eVTOLs and the AAM world into 2023 as well. So real quick here, we have in the new year, of course, Aerotech in Texas, which is our seminal aerospace conference for SAE. AAM will feature prevalently, of course. That is one of our key focus topics and includes so many great technologies coming into the world and being pushed through all around the world. So again, I want to say thank you for the opportunity to speak, and back to you.
Thank you, David. Thank you for the interesting presentation and sharing details of various standards that SAE is working on with the community. So we are doing good in terms of time. Probably we can take a few questions. David, is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Yeah, let me see in Q&A window. I don't see any questions. I see a few questions in the chat window. Yeah, so there are a couple of questions. Let's see how many we can address. Do you look at ISO standards which are being developed? If yes, do similarities, with other standards?
Sure. The ISO standards?
ISO standards, yep.
Yeah, we recently participated at the international level. The ICAO organization, headquartered up in Montreal in Canada, held the term was RPAS, which is remotely piloted aircraft systems. So they had a forum here about a month ago that we participated in. And it was a good example after we had a specific roundtable with just the SDOs with their RPAS panel. So it's really key and relevant to all the SDOs, especially, of course, us as SAE with the regulators. But to help serve industry best, we need to present a unified front, and we do actively communicate with all the major SDOs to speak about what are we working on, what are our key focus areas, and to make sure that we don't cross communicate, that we don't duplicate our efforts. We don't want to be moving ahead and wasting industry's time by developing two standards. And again, as probably a lot of people on the call may be involved with multiple SDOs can tell you, and a lot of times we hear from members themselves is, hey, we're already working on this with ISO. We're already working on this with ASTM or RTCA, which is fine. There's plenty of work to go around, but we work hard to communicate with all of the SDOs to make sure that we don't duplicate those efforts and are aware, try to be as aware as possible of the other work that's going on.
Sure, that's great. Thank you. Maybe let's take one more question. So do we have any standards coming up when it comes to hydrogen production and transportation, as that's one of the main issues?
Yeah, I believe that our hydrogen committees, and I know they're in different stages of the technologies and what they're looking after. I'd say to go and reference my slides, I'm sorry, but yeah, our hydrogen committees, I'll have to check what are exactly their works in progress are, but I know they're actively looking for everything, and infrastructure, becomes probably the key limiting factor for initial operations. It's spoken about a lot. I know when we speak to the people that are most interested in hydrogen is how do we transport it, how do we fuel, what are the limiting factors on getting it on and off the aircraft. A lot of the interesting ideas that I think we're looking to pursue more in 2023 and beyond with hydrogen is a grander topic, which is the airport as an energy hub. So with hydrogen, with electrification, is there opportunities there for operators, for airport infrastructures to create this new hub of energy where there's hydrogen resources, electricity resources, as well as traditional fueling resources. So yeah, I think for sure that's a key concern for a lot of people, and it's definitely in the works throughout our hydrogen committees.
Excellent, David. In fact, we do have a few more questions, but in the interest of time, we have to move on. David, if you are available, feel free to address the questions, in the chat window to the one of the question.
Sure. Yeah, I'll take a look.
Yeah. Thank you, David.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah. Let's move on to the next talk. We have Ritesh with us from FAA. Ritesh is aerospace engineer at US Integration Office, FAA. Ritesh has been actively supporting FAA, US industry, ANSI, and NASA, and he is the custodian of ANSI US standardization roadmap. Ritesh has been supporting various US programs like Boeing MQ-25 and Common KMAX as the US integration lead. He's also involved in the certification of US programs from Boeing, General Atomics, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Google, Titan, and so on. Ritesh is the recipient of many awards, including ANSI's 2020-2021 Leadership and Service Awards in the Meritorious Service Award category. Great to have you here, Ritesh, with us. Over to you to talk about ANSI certification programs.
Just the audio check. Can you hear me loud and clear?
Yes, everything okay.
Okay, thank you.
Both audio and video both are good. Maybe
Awesome,
if you can just
great.
share your screen, we can confirm on that.
Okay, let me do that. Okay, so you should be seeing my screen shortly.
It's coming up. All set. I see PDF, right?
Yes, that's good. How do I minimize this? Okay. Greetings, everyone. Good evening, India. Thank you for inviting us to brief the overview of ANSI US roadmap and the latest update about it. Thank you, organizing committee of SAE India. Thank you, Dr. Ravi Kumar. And thank you all the technical experts and volunteers from India who are actively supporting standards development activities to support production of globally harmonized standards. Okay, how do I, just a second here, please stand by. Okay, how do I, okay, so the next slide here. So this slide shows the condensed information in one page of the 412 pages long version 2 roadmap about ANSI UAS standardization collaborative. And the middle column here shows the cover page of this roadmap version 2. And on this cover page, we have listed 3 categories of aircraft. The far right aircraft on the cover page here shows the large aircraft.
Excuse me, sir. This Vijay here from SND office. Can you go to view and just expand this? Yeah, full screen mode, sir.
Display.
No, read mode. After that, you have this full screen mode. Bottom.
Oh, bottom. Okay.
Yeah, just above that. Sir. Just above that. Full screen mode.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. So this is a one-pager condensed information about 412 pages long version 2 roadmap. And I want to spend a few minutes just to talk about this cover page, which is listed on the center column here. And on this cover page, we have intentionally put 3 categories of aircraft. The far right is the large aircraft. Far left is the small UAS, Part 107 type. And in between is the flying taxis or urban air mobility UAM. And this roadmap has been considered as a major reference for UAS standards and certification by industry. And as you can see here on the left column here, little cartoon here with a bunch of gears connected together. The purpose of this graphics is to really emphasize collaboration, coordination, as well as teamwork in developing globally harmonized standards to support avoiding duplication of standardization effort. And this activity has been supported by 400 plus people coming from 250 plus organization, and it is an ongoing effort. ANSI Standardization Collaborative is a mechanism to advance cross-sector coordination in the rapid production and compatibility of standards and conformance programs needed to support emerging and advanced technologies as well as national and global priorities. The primary mission of UAS-SC or UAS Standardization Collaborative is simply to support rapid production of needed industry standards, keeping in mind the international coordination and adaptability. The last phrase here is really to signify that all the standards communities are highly encouraged to develop globally harmonized and internationally compatible standards. So what are the achievements? We have published version 1 in 2018, version 2 in 2020, and so far ANSI has published 3 gaps progress report, 2 in 2021, 1 in June 2022. This roadmap contains thousands of standards, regulations, reference. And the important message here on this slide is this roadmap has 71 open gaps with list of research exploration opportunities as well as recommendations for the standardization community. And the standardization community is comprised of STOs, standards developing organizations, or industry standards committees, research community that academia is part of, government as well as industry are part of, and then the government people, whether regulators or acquisitions, and so on. So why a roadmap? There are many standards developing organizations or STOs involved in UAS integration activities. ASTM, SAE, IEEE, RTCA, ASME, UL, ISO, CES are some of them. Who are the key contributors for ANSI-UAS roadmap development? So obviously the main focus is US industry. Just to name a few are Boeing, Lockheed Martin Corporation, Northrop Grumman, General Atomics, Airbus, Kaman, Honda, Textron, Joby, GE, Rolls-Royce, Collins, Raytheon, among others. Regulators, FAA, EASA from Europe, TCCA from Canada, ANSC from Brazil, among other civil aviation authorities or CAAs. DoD, NASA, International Civil Aviation Organizations or ICAO from United Nations, UN, technical experts, as well as other stakeholders. So the list of these bullet items are very important for all of us to apply to our daily activities that we are directly or indirectly supporting, either typical traditional aviation ecosystem or USAM integration ecosystem. So UASSC or UAS Standardization Collaborative works to coordinate efforts of both the private and public sectors. It identifies existing standards and standards in development. It defines where gaps exist based on stakeholder needs. It recommends additional work needed, timelines for its completion, and organizations that can perform the standardization work. And final point here is it helps to inform resource allocation for standards participation, avoid duplication of effort, and drive coordinated standards activity. So the important message here is that phrase, the second last phrase on the last bullet point, which is avoid duplication of effort by doing thorough and deep analysis to identify gaps based on the available and existing resources, whether regulations or standards or technological areas. So what are the objectives of UASSC? The primary objective is to clarify the current and future UAS standardization landscape and enable stakeholders to better focus standards participation resources. So this point sort of, hints that we really need to avoid duplication of efforts from all sides within the aviation ecosystem, because we are very less people allocated industry sector and and the ecosystem, and we cannot support duplicative work having less people on more than one committee. And obviously the next objective is it provides a basis for coherent and coordinated US policy and technical input to regional and international audiences on its UAS standardization. And the top bullet point is, we all know collaboration and teamwork are very important, and we all have been already doing it. Summary of ANSI-UAS-SC. ANSI-UAS-SC is not developing standards. The standards are developed at the industry standards committees from ASTM, SAE, ISO, EuroK, IEEE, among others. The ANSI-UAS-SC Roadmap version 2 is considered as a guide for developing standards needed for UAS, spanning all sizes, complexities, and operations. It is an internationally recognized and observed document. It provides the current and desired or future standardization landscape related to UAS-AM integration. This slide shows the harmonization of UAS integration efforts. Both ANSI-UAS roadmap as well as industry standards committees, they are the work of industry. And ANSI-UAS-SC roadmap developed by ANSI on behalf of industry contains list of gaps, list of research explorations or research opportunities, recommendations, references, etc. And industry standards committees as well as NCUAS roadmap, they are two important partners to support the aviation ecosystem here, to support certification and approval from the regulators. Chapter 6 in the roadmap, titled as Airworthiness Standards, grouped as Working Group or WG1, pertains to aircraft, anything airborne, aircraft and associated systems that gets installed on the aircraft. So this chapter is very heavy on avionics, digital and software solutions. As you can see here, we have different levels of autonomy, automation. We have blockchain. We have software considerations and approval. Obviously, section 6.4 avionics and system, C2 communication nav systems, voice and data recorder systems for US, that is commonly known as black boxes in traditional aircraft, CVR, FDR, and we are also not forgetting about the other important technological piece here is section 6.7 noise, emissions, and fuel venting or environmental requirements. That is also a significant area that a lot of us are working together, and SAE has some committees, as well as section 6.2 system safety, human machine interface and integration, as well as section 6.1 design and construction, and also to mention that remote control station, as mentioned in 6.1, we as aviation ecosystem community, we also need to develop standards to support remote control station. Let's go to the next slide here. Chapter 7 pertains with general concerns. It is grouped as Working Group 2 or WG2. And just to name some of the few gaps or few sections here are remote ID, section 7.8, it is aligned with 14 CFR part 89, remote identification of unmanned aircraft. This is the newest part in 14 CFR system of FAA. So we have 7.7 US traffic management or UTM. Similarly, we have section 7.4 ops over people. It is aligned with the newest subpart D of part 107 of 14 CFR system. And this subpart is titled as operations over human beings. And then we have section 7.2, continued operational safety. We all are familiar, we are safety experts. And another section here of very significance and priority is section 7.3, titled as Beyond Visual Line of Sight or BV laws. And just early part of this year, industry and FAA worked together as part of UAS BV laws, Aviation Rulemaking Committee, and that committee published their final report in early part of this year, and that is available in FAA website. So chapter 8 deals with infrastructure inspections, environmental applications, commercial services, as well as workplace safety. So section 8.1, 8.2, and 8.3, they deal with use of a small drone for vertical, linear, horizontal, as well as environmental applications. So section 8.5 pertains to use of a small drone to use at workplace and construction sites to support safety. And section 8.4 here is very important because this signifies, this whole section 8.4 signifies in text the cover page, which states that all the possible use cases of drone are listed or included in this section pertaining to commercial services. So of immediate significance, value, and priority is the commercial package delivery via small UAS or Part 107 type of drone. So that is the first bullet point here. And then similarly, we have this last bullet point here, commercial sensing services, which is the commercial version of the ISR type of use cases of drone. And in this case, it can also include use of small drone as well as large drones. And after that, the next, for long-term and strategic activities that we all are working together at the industry standards committees, research community, and the government are the flying taxis, which is titled here as commercial passenger air taxi transport via UAS, in parentheses, short-haul flights carrying few passengers. And then the other two, subsections here, commercial cargo transport via UAS, that is like a air freight, bigger, not a small package. That's the heavy cargo or air freight. And similarly, we have commercial passenger transport via UAS, long-haul flights carrying many passengers. So basically, the immediate priority right now is really for us to, enable commercial services to enable this commercial package delivery via small or, small-like drones to support package delivery operations, as well as beyond visual line of sight operations or BVLOS operations. So Chapter 9 deals with the use of a small drone to support public safety as well as law enforcement communities, such as police department activities, or to use a small drone in case of natural hurricane. That I think last year we had. I think last year Chennai had some hurricane, so there was there were some drones used in Chennai as part of Chennai Tamil Nadu Police Department operations. So that was a great case. That is listed in Chapter 9 here. So just to name a few are the use of a small drone to support search and rescue operation, or SAR, SAR. The other one is the Section 9.8, public safety tactical operations by using small drones. Section 9.9 is UAS detection and mitigation. It is split into two technologies. First is the UAS detection. Second is the UAS mitigation. And this is commonly known as CUAS or counter UAS. And Section 9.10 is the use of small drones for emergency management as well as natural disaster. Chapter 10 pertains to personnel training, qualification, and certification standards. It is part of Working Group 2, WG2. And these are the these are the gap areas, and the most important gap here is Section 10.7, titled as Human Factors in UAS Operations. Now I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ritesh. Let's see if there are any questions posted. I don't see any question in the Q&A window. Let me take a look at chat window. Yeah, there is one question. How are we going to control the air traffic for drones?
So we have a separate division at the FAA called Air Traffic Organization. We call in short form ATO. And our colleagues from that office have been working on a daily basis with our international partners, as well as our partners from the ICAO of United Nations. And we also have a lot of senior representatives also from air traffic organizations. And we have a number of committees pertaining to air traffic integration as well as aerospace integration. I hope I answered your questions completely.
Yeah, yeah, it is acknowledged, Ritesh. That's good. How do the standards for US and US detection, collaborate? Do you
Okay.
have some systems on board, to aid in detection as well?
Yes, this questions, I believe, pertains to this bullet point here under section 6.4, avionics and subsystems. So we have a, one gap areas here titled as systems performing detect and avoid functions, or we commonly call that as DAA, Delta Alpha Alpha, and RTCA and ASTM F38 and RTCA SC subcommittee SC-228 committees. These are the two committees that have been working on the DAA or detect and avoid technological solutions.
Good. Yeah, I
And
think the question is actually coming from that, Pritesh. Yeah.
yes, and we, in addition to this, we also, FAA has written a technical standards order or TSO pertaining to detect and avoid.
Okay.
And we'll be happy to share that FAA TSO document. It's all, free and open.
Sure. Yeah, if it is shareable, probably you can drop the link in the chat window, Ritesh.
Yeah, and so the final information on the DAA is the ASTM F38 committee and RTCA. They have MOU, Memorandum of Understanding or Agreement, MOU, MOA, to work together, and they are working also in a cross-pollinated way to solve this DA technological area.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So there is one more question. Are there any agencies which oversee use of standards in US?
So we have NIST, National Institute for Standards Technology, NIST, and they are part of US Department of Commerce or DOC. And they are responsible for standardization activities for pretty much all industry sectors. And we get, from our, our US integration office, especially our group and, my boss is responsible for standardization activities related to US AAM. And we take NIST training on a regular basis, almost annual basis. And NIST has been also part of a lot of the, these significant industry standards committees that are developing emerging and advanced technologies. And I know that NIST has been actively supporting ASTM F38 committees, as well as a lot of SAE committees. And we work and collaborate with them. We work very closely. And then we also have, on the defense side, DoD has, similar construct for the military aviation side. And a lot of the DoD, defense community, they also support STO's, industry standards committees from SAE, ASTM, RTCA, as well as EuroK. So we all work together in a collaborative fashion to support innovation, and also, we support to avoid duplication of effort on standardization activities.
Excellent. I think that's all the questions for now, Ritesh. Thank you. Thank you, Ritesh. Thank you once again for taking time off and getting into details of what exactly ANSI is trying to, is doing to support US. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting us, and thank you, all the volunteers, and thank you all the, a lot of companies in India who, which are part of the, national and international aviation ecosystem to, not just to support the the aerospace systems, but also to support the standardization activity. Thank you, Dr. Ravi Kumar. Thank you, Dr. Dinesh. Thank you, Sastri, and and thank you all these companies based out in Chennai and Bangalore who are actively supporting US-based standards developing organizations or STOs standardizations activities. Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you. Thanks, Ritesh. So we are doing very good on time. We're exactly on time. So let's move on to the next talk. We have two speakers now who are going to talk about blockchain in US system. So we have Dr. Ravi and Dr. Dinesh joining us for this talk. Dr. Ravi, as you already heard, he's the Vice President and Head of Advanced Engineering Group at Infosys. And Dr. Dinesh is CTO at UCAL Technologies in Aerospace and Defense Division. And he's a Certified Chief Innovation Officer. Interestingly, Dr. Dinesh is DGCA certified drone pilot with 3 patents and 20 plus international journal publications. He's also a member of G31, G34, and S18. Dr. Dinesh won Dr. Richard Greaves Award for outstanding contributions to aerospace engineering in 2019 and 2020. And he also won Innovation Excellence Award for Indo-Korea project from DST, Government of India in New Delhi in 2019. So with that, Dr. Ravi, Dr. Dinesh, over to you.
Thank you, Satish. Hope you are able to see my screen.
Yes, audio, video, screen, all good.
Perfect, perfect. First of all, thank you. We take this opportunity to thank SAE India and SAE International for giving us this wonderful opportunity to present on this Aerostandards Workshop. Myself and Dinesh, we are going to present opportunities, challenges, and requirements for use of blockchain in unmanned aircraft systems. In fact, this entire work was done as part of the aerospace information report that we have been working together with the G31 committee. This AIR document is AIR 7356, Opportunities, Challenges, and Requirements for Use of Blockchain in Unmanned Aircraft Systems operating below 400 feet above ground level for commercial use. So this is the document that we are currently working, and a number of people have contributed to this particular document development. You can see here all the people who have contributed to this particular document. That includes many people, including Dr. Ravi Rajamani, who is there, who is going to speak today. Okay, and many colleagues from India, apart from Dinesh and myself, we have people from Infosys, DRDO, GE, who has contributed to this. We acknowledge all their support in this document. So what we are going to present is essentially a kind of teaser of this particular document. So before we get on how blockchain is going to help unmanned aircraft systems, it's just going to give a kind of perspective on the unmanned aircraft systems. In fact, Ritesh has wonderfully summarized in the earlier presentation. So if you look at the entire unmanned aircraft systems, it consists of unmanned aircraft, command and control and communications, infrastructure that is out there. And the communication between the ground station and the unmanned aircraft can be either through satellite or a dedicated RF link. And this particular UAV is categorized based on various parameters that includes the maximum takeoff weight, size, operation, range, and autonomy. And as you all know, drones are widely used now both in the government sector as well as in the enterprise sector, whether it is for security, surveillance, disaster management, or the other operations, logistics, asset health management. In fact, Dinesh has used some of his unmanned aircraft systems for the recent flights in Chennai last year and a few months back as well. So if you look at what are the challenges that we have today as far as the UAS is concerned, right? There is a huge amount of growth that is out there. It's an exponential growth that is happening. And if you look at this entire ecosystem, there are many stakeholders, and all these stakeholders need to be managed. There are many challenges related to the certification, airspace management, operations, digital supply chain management, and maintenance. We are going to walk through each of those challenges and see where and how blockchain can help in meeting those challenges. Okay, and of course, there was a question earlier which talks about how do you manage the air traffic management, right? So, which involves a lot of this frequent and high volume data logging, data security for the trusted and automated operations. There are many other challenges that are out there. So our objective is to look at how blockchain can help in meeting these challenges. So before we get on how blockchain can help, just look at what is blockchain, right? We are looking at blockchain is only from an enterprise function perspective, not the public blockchain, but an enterprise blockchain. As you all know, blockchain is a distributed ledger technology which helps in tracking the transactions. It is a shared ledger that has smart contract capability, which gives some more additional automation capability. And if you look at this particular slide, it gives a kind of overview on how aerospace ecosystem can interact through the blockchain, right? Through the shared ledger and also the smart contract. And hence, blockchain can eliminate the middleman, essentially removes the counterparty risk with the software architecture that enables direct collaboration, reduces the transactional friction. It's essentially through the smart contracts with the terms, conditions, and business rules specified by the parties, embedded in the software, reducing the associated cost. Hence, it prevents the security risk. Transactions can be validated across, and it enables coordination. All members can use historical transactions to self-synchronize using data assured to have not been altered, right? Basically, you can get that immutability part of it as far as the data transaction is concerned. It can save time and cost. It can avoid delays. Right? So these are a lot of benefits that are out there and which seems lucrative as far as the blockchain is concerned. However, as any other technology, blockchain is also not perfect. Right? Blockchain has many concerns. More specifically, it is computationally intensive, right? Each node in a blockchain runs and maintains the consensus algorithm, which provides fault tolerance ability and minimizes the downtime. Right? So that makes it more difficult for real-time applications. Okay? Especially the network speed and cost are some of those concerns because if the blockchain has a large number of nodes and it requires good amount of computational cost. Data volume, again, as more and more transactions are getting added to the blockchain ledger, it will increase the size of the distributed database and things like that. Okay, and some of the concerns related to the application performance. Okay, blockchain application is slower than the traditional one, as additional tasks that need to be carried out, like signature validation, consensus algorithms, and things like that. And another important thing is the standards. Okay, blockchain is in the early stages of evolution, right? And hence there are no standards that are available, and these standards are very, very important as far as the scalability or applicability is concerned. Okay, so those are some of the things that that need to be looked at while you look at blockchain as an alternate technology to solve some of the challenges that you have. So let's look at it. Having looked at the blockchain, both benefits as well as the challenges, let us look at the life cycle stages of UAS, right? Of course, this is more or less similar to the life cycle stages that we have for the bigger aircraft. It will consist of design, development, and production stages. It will have certification part of it, both on the type certification, airworthiness approvals, and all other certifications related to the production certification, MRO certification, and things like that. Right? Then you have the operations phase, then the maintenance and the disposal. So it's essentially the life cycle is pretty involved, and of course it can be as complicated as possible compared to the large aircraft program that we have, or it can be on the smaller side where the size of the UAV is less. Then probably some of them can be straightforward. Okay. So let us look at it in each of those life cycle stages, where and how blockchain can help. First thing is UAS certification part of it. Because you have exponential growth of UAS, you need to have good technology that can help you in increasing the throughput, right, in terms of the certification. That is one challenge that we have. And again, another one is these certification procedures are also continuously evolving, and that is another challenge. And we need some kind of technology which can help in immutability and smart automation features to enable the safer, faster, and permanent certification process to regulate the US. Okay. Definitely, here blockchain can help in certification processes and supports. More specifically, you can manage the paperless transactions, immutable records. You can effectively implement that, digital evaluations, and also reduce the human effort and increased effectiveness. Okay. So it has a lot of those advantages. Similarly, if you look at the US operations, right? Again, you are flying these US systems in an unregulated airspace, right? Because of that, there are a lot of potential risks associated with illegal and misuse of US operations. It can be flight operations interference, damage to infrastructure, secure facility trespassing, and a few other things that includes carrying lethal materials and things like that. And here, blockchain can help a very good way, in the sense it can provide all the transactions that are happening in immutable, decentralized data storage with highly traceable and secure data. So that will help a lot to track and trace, and also it can help as an hindrance. Right? That's one important thing. Of course, the challenge is we need. Blockchain cannot use it for a real-time applications, right? It has more computations and all that stuff that is there. So it requires some more technology maturity before we actually apply some of these time-critical applications. But as far as the immutability and traceability is concerned, this is very good. Similarly, on the blockchain for the US maintenance, okay? Here again, maintenance processes for US can be as complicated as those of a large commercial aircraft, or as simple as replacing a part by the operator or the owner. And managing and maintaining the MRO process on time requires good amount of automation and digitalization capabilities. Okay. So essentially, if you look at here again, There are small and medium US maintenance regulations are still immature and will continue to evolve. So here, definitely blockchain-enabled MRO operations can help in preventing some of the human errors. Okay, it brings the transparency, traceability of the MRO processes, traceability of technicians, qualifications, and training history, tamper-proof records, which improves the compliance. Of course, it is quite similar. Even you can ask, can blockchain help even in the regular commercial aviation sector for the large aircrafts? Yes, that is equally possible. And here we are talking about US, whose range is much larger in the sense it can be as complicated as the large commercial aircraft or a smaller part that can be replaced. Okay, so from that angle, yes, blockchain can help improving this MRO operations process. And another important thing is in the supply chain side. Right? Of course, most of the blockchain applications today are in the supply chain side of it. Right? Supply chain is also is a pretty complex, consisting of several component systems, suppliers, and service providers to meet several contractual obligations. Okay, with respect to the time and cost and the quality part of it. Right? Also, blockchain can offer the digital ledger technologies which can help ensure the immutability and traceability of all the transactions in a secured manner. And of course, if you look at supply chain, it goes outside the enterprise itself, so because it'll go into the entire ecosystem, right? And whatever benefits that we could realize so far, blockchain applications in US supply chain, all of them are equally applicable for the US as well. And blockchain in the US disposal, this is also equally important because unlike the bigger aircraft where you have the life of the aircraft is 30 to 40 years in the commercial side, here these US applications, probably the lifespan may be less, and probably most of these aircraft parts may be salvaged for future use. And of course, it has a lot of those components which are related to the lubricants, batteries, electronic parts, and things like that, which need to be disposed in accordance with the applicable environmental standards. So, which is also a kind of tricky situation. So, how do we manage those the parts recycling and also parts disposal? And blockchain-enabled process can help in meeting these challenges of disposal stage with very good traceability and compliance. So, in a way, blockchain has very good opportunities, in the sense blockchain can provide good opportunities to meet some of these challenges related to the US and the various life cycle stages. Okay, so with that, what I'll do is I'll just pass it on to my colleague, Dr. Dinesh, who is going to take over the next few slides, and he will walk you through some of those detailed interactions and how blockchain can help in each of those interactions. Over to you, Dr. Dinesh.
Thank you, Dr. Ravi. Thank you. Good evening, good morning, everyone. I'm audible?
Yes.
Yes. Let us look at the US ecosystem interaction. There are almost 5 interactions. The US ecosystem stakeholders, which includes the OEM, aircraft certificate body, owners, MRO, and airspace regulation body. The OEM and the aircraft certification authorities interact for the product certification. The operator and the airspace regulatory, they are involved in both the operator certification and ATC clearance as the local government regulations. The operator and OEM interaction for procurement of the products. This is actually very, very important, for the US the ecosystems. Okay, next slide. Here we talk about the detailed documentation, involving interaction that we are discussed earlier. All the stakeholders must have a unique digital identifier all the documents should be made digital for automated transaction or enable computer to understand the data and take the suitable action. The digital compliance guidelines are important to improve the automation and reduce the error. It is also necessary for the OEMs to maintain the track record for the manufactured parts and other related documents. The MRO is supposed to digitally, the completely store all the maintenance record and damage report for all the US serviced. Next slide. The requirement for the US blockchain, especially in a commercial use, the OEM and operator, the standards, exactly you can see, the very important interactions. Here you can be able to see the basic interaction between the operator, that is called the owner or OEM interaction. Initially the request for the code, and then completely every stage interactions and detailed interaction, all the things records will be stored in blockchain and smart contract. Okay, we can completely record all the things like that. The stakeholders, all the records. It's kind of different stakeholder like OEM operator, the OEM, and then you can see that certification body. All the records will be captured and stored in a blockchain and then a smart contract. Okay, this is the one glimpse of OEM and operator, the blockchain, the requirement for use of blockchain in the commercial use. Okay, next slide. This slide, the present the requirement for use of the blockchain in a commercial use application, especially for the supply chain. The supply chain interaction between the stakeholders is very important. All the data transfer, the interaction across the entire supply chain can be recorded in a blockchain. This data can be tracked in a timestamp and then whenever the record. The key players in a supply chain are the operator and the supplier, OEM and MRO. Note that the owner of the US will play the role, the important role if he is not an operator. You can show the complete the figure explaining about the interactions and then documentations and then supply chain activity. Next slide. This is a need for blockchain in US standard. The complete need for standard and requirement and then all the stakeholder interaction. The standards are needed for the effective and the efficient implementation of the blockchain enabled US process. All that the stakeholders should have a verified digital identity so that the blockchain network can be trust the input. You can see the PKI and X50 certificate that the approximate classes can be used for the purpose. The stakeholders data and documents should be exchanged confidentially with appropriate permission management. It also necessary that documents are shared via the blockchain, the standardized XML format, not scanned for the paper in a PDF format. Then the verification can be automated with a smart contract. Okay. This is a complete need. Now you can see that clear. I think Dr. Ravi mentioned about that this is a teaser document. We are actually bringing the important message. The need for the standards and requirement, and then the different stakeholder interactions. I think the next slide, Ravi. Finally, we can conclude this presentation with the following important points. Okay. The basic understanding, though, you can see that from the opportunity and challenge and requirement for use of the blockchain in US. Okay, that is the important thing of this document. The blockchain can provide many advantages across the US life cycle, from the certification and supply chain and airspace management and operation to maintenance. Completely. The blockchain also certain limitation. Finally, we need to use the blockchain whenever it benefit. Okay. This ecosystem needs a certain data standard to scale the opportunity. Definitely, the blockchain can make sure tamper-proof immutability. Actually, you can see that the document and certification point of view is very, very important, and then traceability and secure. Today, actually, you can see that UAS application. This standard will help you for the future standardization things. Today, this is a presentation. We bring about the complete teaser, the important points, the importance of the standard. Especially the presentation is a teaser for AR 7356 document. For more detail, we are request you to refer down the AR7356 document, I think which may be available in the month of January 2023. You can see in SAE standard. You can get complete informations. And then finally, thank you, SAE, and then for this opportunity and for the SAE standard. You can reach us at this mail ID. We are happy to answer the audience question now. Okay, and we now pass it on to the Sadish. Thank you. Thank you all.
Dinesh, thank you, Dr. Ravi. Informative talk. Let's see if we have questions. I don't see any in the Q&A window. In the chat window, I don't see it. Probably let's give a few seconds, if any one of you have questions, please do post in the Q&A window. So while others are taking time to post their questions, Dr. Ravi, Dr. Dinesh, one question, just to understand what's the current state in terms of adapting this technology. First of all, it's nice to see technologies like blockchain are getting into US, right? Where is it right now? Is it adapted? Do you have you seen this being adapted in any of the programs or any use case that you had? You talked about use cases starting from OEM, all the way all the way till the life of the system or program, right? Or the life cycle. Did you see this is being adopted already anywhere? If
Yeah,
not,
no,
if not, when do you see, when this technology in US could be a reality?
yeah, no, that's a very good question, Satish. Definitely, if you look at this entire technology, right, it is in the early stages of adoption, and keep the US apart, but in the commercial aviation side, people are using it, and they are using it more from a supply chain side of it, right? SITA and Sky Republic, they came together and put together the MRO blockchain alliance, and they are rolling it out, that entire MRO blockchain alliance, to various companies to use that particular blockchain to track and trace the logistics part of it, the supply chain related thing. And of course, it has become more and more prominent of late because of the COVID and other global disturbances that we have. Supply chain has become a kind of very, very critical point. And to meet some of those supply chain challenges, people started looking at using the blockchain. Okay, that's one. And in fact, some of the companies like the Honeywell, they have an aftermarket portal. They say that entire portal is enabled through the blockchain. Okay, so which I see one of the commercial applications. And similarly, a few other organizations and startups are very, very active in this particular thing. And yeah, in fact, a lot of those people are members of the G31 committee. Yeah, Dinesh, you want to add?
Yes, actually, the one of the DOT document in US, okay, the use case, especially the organ transportation, the operator, and then you can see the hospital and the end user and the regulatory body, the interaction, all the things captured in a blockchain. Okay, that is a use case in I think in the US. I think this is adapting international level, and then the implementing. Many of them are implementing in the use case based. The needed. Healthcare is one of the important thing. Okay, the blood and organ things are implementing. Future, we are able to see this technology in a greater level.
Excellent, excellent. So let's take one question. We have one question here. So do we know, is there any visibility on who will regulate the blockchain, once we are adapting? So from your perspective, is this going to be single regulatory or going to be multiple organizations, collaborating with each other?
Yeah, no, I think that's a very, very good question. In fact, the way we look at it is blockchain is a distributed ledger technology, right? The people who are onboarded on the blockchain, will have the equal rights. Okay, it is essentially the ecosystem who are onboarded onto the blockchain are going to control that. Okay, there will not be any kind of single controller. That is the beauty of it. And also, this is not a public blockchain like a Bitcoin and things like that, but it is more like an enterprise blockchain. The people who are important key stakeholders, they are the ones who are going to be onboarded, and they are the ones who are going to manage and regulate that particular network. And in future, it could be multiple blockchains working together, and there could be interaction between blockchains. Okay, and something like the pilot certification. Okay, it could be one blockchain. That pilot certification may be interacting with blockchain that is used for the aircraft operations. Okay, by the airline segment. So it could be many such things that could be there. It's an interconnected blockchains. In fact, there are some standards that people are working on. How do we interconnect these blockchains and things like that? So the entire idea here is more or less like a decentralized, so that the ecosystem can work together, coordinated way, take the help of the technology.
Excellent. Excellent, Dr. Ravi. So yeah, so that audience, if you have any questions, please do post in the chat window. Dr. Ravi, Dinesh, will address them, in the chat. So thank you, Dr. Ravi, Dr. Dinesh. So everyone, now let's take a break, a quick break. It's 7 o'clock, 1 minute on my computer. So let's take 9-minute break. Let's get back. Let's refuel. Get back at 9 minutes from now. That would be 7:10. And we have an interesting panel discussion. So see you all shortly.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.
SAE India is India's leading resource for mobility technology. As an individual member-driven society of mobility practitioners, the ownership of SAE India rests with its members who are individuals from the mobility community, which includes engineers, executives from industry, government officials, academics, and students. SAE India is a strategic alliance partner of SAE International, registered in India as an Indian non-profit engineering and scientific society dedicated to the advancement of the mobility industry in India. We are the most preferred technical body for knowledge dissemination and skill development of mobility professionals, students and faculty. We are a trusted think tank advising policymakers on mobility-related matters. We are a self-sustaining society with more than 10% of mobility professionals as members. We are a nimble and professional organization creating value for mobility engineering community. The Indian government is also actively promoting indigenization with cutting-edge technologies by manufacturing them in the country under Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat.
As I was mentioning before we get into the break, we have an interesting panel discussion now, focusing on US standardization, the need and the challenges specific to India. And to have this panel discussion, let me introduce the team first. Dear panelists, excuse me for a brief intro. In the interest of time, I'll introduce you in brief. So we have Smith Shah joining as a moderator for this panel. Smith Shah is President of Drone Federation of India. We have Vipul Singh, CEO of Arav Unmanned Systems, joining as a panelist. We have Mr. C.S. Sharma, Joint Director, Quality Council of India, joining as panelist. We have Professor S.N. Wonkar, who is Chief Research Scientist at Indian Institute of Science, joining as a panelist. With that, Mr. Smith Shah, over to you to get started with the panel discussion.
Hi, thank you, Satish. I hope I'm audible to everyone.
Yes.
Very good evening to everyone who's joined with us today. I'll request all the panel members to turn on their video if it's possible, so that we can have a more engaging discussion. Okay, so we have Mr. C.S. Sharma, Professor Omkar, Vipul. I hope you have joined in too. And we have Sashwat.
Yeah, Smith Shah. So Saswat couldn't join. There is some unexpected, difficulty from his end, so he couldn't join.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so just a quick audio check. Vipul, are you joined in with us? Vipul, if you can hear me, you're on mute. Okay, Professor Omkar, a quick
Oh,
check.
yeah. Very good evening.
Good evening, sir. Good to see you.
Yeah, same here.
Mr. C.S. Sharma.
Good evening, Smith. I'm there. Yeah.
Good evening. C.S., if you could be a slightly louder.
Sure. Yeah. Now you can hear me?
Yes, that's perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think maybe Vipul is having some connectivity issue. I'll request Team SAE India to just check with him. And in the interest of everyone's time, I would want to begin today's session. So thank you everyone for joining in, and thank you for joining in this session and discussing this very important issue, which is to do with the entire standardization and various aspects around the UAV ecosystem. Uh, Before we begin today's discussion and we pick our minds with the speakers, I would want to give a brief insight on what's happening in the UAV space. For our attendees who may not be following the recent developments, uh, last year in August of 2021, the government of India published a notification and a new set of rules called the Drone Rules 2021. This basically was the rule that was the defining moment for the drone industry. And under these rules, basically the entire policy framework of the country has been liberalized. Before this, we had various regimes like the no permission, no takeoff, and various regulatory requirements, including by way of a lot of licenses. But after Drone Rules 2021, a master document, a rule under which the entire governance of the drone ecosystem can happen, has been notified, specifically 25th August 2021, if I'm not mistaken. And the entire governance of manufacturing, operations, training, and various other aspects of the drone ecosystem are now brought in under Drone Rules 2021. Now, these rules specify the requirements for different types of basic compliances, like if you are a manufacturer, what you need to do to sell a compliant drone in the ecosystem. If you are a service provider, what you need to do to ensure that you have valid and legal drones through which you can provide services by way of registration or any other compliance, as well as the valid manpower. So in case you are a company that is into drone services, then what is the compliance that you need to follow, both from the equipment side as well as from the drone pilot side, in case they are operating drones on behalf of your company. So that's covered. Moving forward, when the drone operations need to be scaled, there will be a requirement of drone corridors being set up, unmanned traffic management being set up. So those aspects have also been introduced briefly in the rules, and that's what essentially showcases that the rules overall provide a governance framework for all aspects of drones, whether it is the smaller class of drones or the bigger class of drones with maximum takeoff weight up to 500 kilograms, whether it is the short visual line of sight operations or the long range beyond visual line of sight operations. All of these operations, whether it is the remotely piloted operations or the automation or automated operations where no remote pilot is required, all of these aspects are covered under the single rule. And it is, I believe, safe and very logical to say that the rules in the Indian ecosystem now cover all types of drone operations, and everything where an unmanned aircraft is going to fly with weight up to 500 kilograms is covered under Drone Rules 2021. So that's the brief sort of development that's happened in August of 21. Later on, we had the production-linked incentive scheme, under which the government gives incentive to drone manufacturers, which came up. A simple example would be if a manufacturer does a revenue of 1 crore, and if the purchase cost of his drone parts or raw material is about 40 lakh rupees, then the selling price minus the purchase cost is considered as the value addition. Even though the value addition may have various cost components like operational expenditure, electricity expenses, salaries, and all of that, still that 60 lakh rupees in this example is considered as the local value addition. And on that 60 lakh rupees, as the example, government is giving 20% incentive. So imagine if you, by this example, had 1 crore of revenue, the government would give you back about 12 lakhs approximately, which is the 20% of that 60 lakh rupees as a financial incentive. And just to sort of share with everyone, this is not a tax exemption. This is not an incentive where you don't pay tax in the future. This is cash flow and cash incentive coming back to your bank account. So this is a very solid incentive that is coming in. And the PLI scheme for drone and drone components is one of the schemes where the sort of the incentive is as high as 20%. So that's the second development that happened. The third development that happened in the drone ecosystem was a blanket ban on import of drones. This is to boost domestic manufacturing. So if you are a drone manufacturer in the country and you are just starting out and you are sort of importing all the components and assembling here, well, I will not comment on whether that's the right approach or not, but legally, that type of business is also allowed. This is to ensure that all types of manufacturing or sale of drones in the country happens through Indian manufacturing effort. So whether it's a foreign company or an Indian company, they can follow all the due processes and sell the drone in the country as well as export. But the manufacturing unit or the final assembly unit has to be in India. That's the purpose of the drone import ban, to ensure that local manufacturing and domestic manufacturing can be boosted. And during this entire assembly or manufacturing processes, the learnings of the process are with the Indian stakeholders and the employees who are employed at various manufacturing units, which was the third incentive. First, as I mentioned, was Drone Rules 2021. Second, Production Linked Incentive Scheme. Third, Import Ban. And the fourth one, which is we are seeing that government is acting as a market maker, which is sort of doing large scale procurement of drones and drone services. So just to give a few examples, the Indian Army right now is expected to procure drones worth approximately 2,000 crores in the next 12 months or so. All major mining projects that have a sizable area need to undergo at least one drone survey to meet their annual regulatory compliances. All new projects that are coming in the railways and the roadways, drone surveys have become almost compulsory and are also being accepted in some cases as a proof for making payment, that whether the contractor has done the job or not. So that's the kind of focus that this sector is getting, whether it is in terms of policy, financial incentive, or it is in terms of government procuring drones in large quantities or services in large quantities. We have also seen that the private sector is sort of procuring drones in a very large way. So the long explanation and long introduction was required because a lot of people think of drones as either just a recreational photography tool, or if they even have the understanding of the technology, they don't probably have the understanding of what's happening in the overall ecosystem. Why are people talking about drones? Why is India talking about reforms in the drone sector? Which is why I thought maybe it's very important to put a context on and a overall sort of background on what is happening in the drone sector and where are we going as such. Now I would want to move on to our panelists. So we see that we have Vipul also joined in now. Initially there were some connection issues, I guess. Today's topic is a very important one, which is going to sort of play a very deciding factor on whether India can be not just a drone hub, but a drone manufacturing hub. What are the key requirements for that, and what are the sort of key drivers that are going to act in that? And with that, I will start posing a few questions to my panelists. I hope you can give short remarks for the initial questions, and then I'll give everyone an opportunity to sort of counter each other or give a longer remark. So the first question I have from the manufacturing perspective So Vipul runs a company called Arav Unmanned Systems, also rebranded as Aereo, and has been into manufacturing and various types of services. Vipul, you've been operating different types of drones, and you may have interacted with different systems and different subcomponents. What do you feel is this entire need of having standards? Pretty much all the different components are available easily from outside. People have been assembling drones and various RC aircraft since quite some time. So from a manufacturer's perspective, do you feel that there is any need for these types of standards, or is that a advantageous thing or a disadvantageous thing? If you could do a very basic context setting on that front.
Sure. No, I mean, definitely there is a notion that standards bring a lot of organization in the industry. And how they bring the organization in the industry is that while we are contemplating so many critical use cases to be served with the drones, and many of them are going to be also directly affecting the economic activities in the country and how the sectors are going to grow and increase their efficiency by using the technology. And they will be operating in a very wide variety of environment as well. When we talk about mines, when we talk about oil and gas refineries, we talk about road infrastructure, we talk about drones flying over villages and cities. In fact, even drone doing a lot of agricultural spraying as well is one of the use case. And then eventually we are also looking at logistics and transportation applications using drones, right? So we're going to have a lot of integration of this technology with different other, or I would say different kind of airspaces. And it will be flying over different type of population and infrastructure. And the repercussions or negative repercussions of any drone failure is going to be very high. For example, a 20 lakh rupees drone can cause damages worth more than 25-30 crores if it, or even more if it falls over a very critical infrastructure. So I think the first challenge with which the standards solve is to bring reliability in the ecosystem, so that no one goes and integrates an unreliable product and starts flying and operating it over some critical infrastructure and over people and poses some safety and security threat. So only when it is reliable, people will have the confidence to adopt this technology more and more and bring it as a critical part of their business. So that's point number one. And then point number two is that, of course, the downstream impact of this is the scalability of the ecosystem. It just brings scalable operations so that there is lesser dependencies on, let's say, manual assessment of the health of equipment or its integrity in the whole process. So you also want to see that while the drone is reliable in few flights or the first flight, it can execute the mission defined for it. It can survive through its life cycle in that environment. So that is the third part, second part. And the third part is basically pushing the quality barrier, right? Only when you push the quality barrier, and we can set an ambition saying that we want to make India a drone hub of the world, because otherwise what will happen is there will be a boundary of quality which will be made within the country, because India is a very price sensitive nation, and ultimately people will always expect decreasing prices in the wake of competitions which are going to increase, and they will start simply giving lesser preference to quality which ultimately helps deliver reliability and scale both, and also global competitiveness. So if quality is compromised and for only delivering lower cost, then ultimately the bigger vision which is there to set up a globally competitive ecosystem will not be accomplished. Only through standards we can make sure that anything which is produced or used in this country cannot be below a certain quality. Okay. And the fourth most important part is that this is an emerging sector. Being an emerging sector, there is a lot of development which is going to happen, and it's very easy. The way the global markets are so dependent on each other, it's very easy for anyone to, let's say, not let the industry grow in the right direction if they want a particular country's economy to depend on only imported products, if those products are not made by a particular standards. What I'm trying to say is that low cost and low quality will dominate, and countries which are there generally in the neighborhood end up dumping such low cost, low quality product, because as a country we are very fond of low cost. Whether it is coming at quality or not, that's a different thing. And that leads to generally a sabotage of the industry, which is generally at a very infant stage and trying to grow. So the standards also keep in check that anything which flows in this country cannot come at a reliability, safety and security compromise. It has to be meeting those standards, the way CE standards or other standards are there to protect the interest of the citizens which are going to interact with that technology. So these are my takes that what is the benefit as a manufacturer, right? And how it benefits both a small let's say manufacturer or a small startup or a company, and also the overall ecosystem and the users of the technology as well.
Thanks, Vipul. I think points brought out by you on bringing in reliability towards the systems, having a minimum quality benchmark for not just a company but the overall ecosystem, some sort of a minimum entry barrier to ensure that the products that are being used in the ecosystem are deemed safe or deemed reliable up to a certain factor. And also one factor that I think you were trying to place was around interoperability and people doing their job but still being able to work together. This is specifically the case of drone parts and various types of subsystems. So good points made from the manufacturing side. Next, I would like to move on to Professor Omkar. Professor Omkar, if you could highlight a few, assessments that you did around the drone standard creation need, as well as certain challenges involved in the same.
Yeah.
Over to you,
Thank
Professor.
you, Smith, and namaste to all the panelists. I think Smith, I think you have given a very good introductory remarks, and thanks Vipul for your insight into the standards. I will be wearing the hat of the chairman of the TED 32, that is the Committee on Drone Standardization in India, on behalf of BIS, for which I am the chairman. So here, yes, very true. Standards are very important. I think that's undoubtedly the history also has taught us that without standards, we would really not survive. In fact, in the medical electronics, for example, India lost the race just because of the standards issues. And at least in the drones, we should not lose, because as far as the drone technology is concerned, I think we are on par with almost the international companies. So in the BIS, we have about 8 subcommittees looking at all the matters that go into the standards of the drones. And we are in line, aligned with the international standards. In fact, BIS is also associated with ISO. Then we had some webinars in which we had experts from FAA, ESA. So all these things, so we are aligned. And when you talk about importing things, I think even on the imports, we should be very, very careful. Even there, unless we follow standards from where we are importing, it's going to be very disastrous. So considering all these things, the drone standards are being formulated. I think the discussion is going on with other things. About 4 drafts, the preliminary drafts on 4 subcommittees are already on the BIS website. I only request the industry leaders to actually go through it and offer their comment. For example, QCI and DGCI, we are all closely working with formulating the standards. Industry people are also there, but we need more industries to actually look at what we are doing so that we can align ourselves and the whole ecosystem improves. While we are aware of all these reliability standards, the safety standard, the cybersecurity angle that we need to bring in, and the aspects of UTM, that is urban traffic management of these UAVs. In making the standards, we should also be aware that we should not be too overcautious to kill the industry. So that is also equally important. While we place importance to reliability, well, there is a stretch how much we can go to. For example, if you simply go with the lines of the civil aircrafts, then there is going to be too tough a certification process and it will kill the industry. So there should be a judicious line that we need to draw, how much to take and how to formulate this. Towards this, what as the from the BIS committee, I have felt as of now, what is actually should happen and what we are missing is the intense industry interaction. As you know, this forum is quite open. Anybody can participate in our discussions from the industry, but yet due to various reasons, it does not happen because we have some frequent meetings, etc. We understand. And as a part of our effort, already the agricultural drone standards are published in the Gazette of India, but it has not penetrated to industry yet. In the sense, not many, I have talked to a lot of industries who make agricultural drones, they are not aware that a standard exists. So through this panel, now I would like to request to all of you is that it is high time that we all meet together, the standards bodies, the industries, everything. Maybe a physical meeting because now all that COVID cloud is over. We should have a day long just to discuss about standards, what BIS is doing, what QCA, DGCA also has their opinions, and what the industry feels and where we should converge. I think that should happen very, very soon, very as early as possible, so that we will have a good standards for drones in the country, at least in the coming 4 to 6 months. Smith.
Thank you, Professor Omkar. Point well taken, and we'll ensure that we are able to converge more. I think the past few years have been more about the policy first, and to ensure that there is a ecosystem where the industry can survive and then thrive. And now is the entire perspective on technology development, standardization, and all of that. But I thank you for your valuable comments. Next, I will move on to Mr. C.S. Sharma, who is representing Quality Council of India. They run a very important scheme around the mandatory certification for drones under Drone Rules 2021. CS, my question to you is in two fronts. First, if you could explain in brief about the certification program that is a mandate under the law. So what is that, and what does one manufacturer do under that? And certain challenges and achievements, so both the good and the bad of that scheme that has come out. So maybe you can start with that and then talk about the further need for standardization and guidance and all of that under this certification scheme. CS, over to you.
Thank you, Smith. So, despite of a lot of efforts from all the relevant stakeholders, whether it's regulator, industry, academia, or certification bodies or accreditation bodies, across the sector, I have seen in my entire professional career that there is a myth that attaining quality and maintaining quality is a costly affair. But believe me, this is not the truth. In most of the cases, there are a number of surveys have been conducted worldwide where it has been proven that cost for good quality is always less than cost for poor quality. So in certain cases, cost for good quality may be around 3 to 10% of total revenue, and the cost of poor quality may go beyond, for example, 15 to 25% of total revenue. And there is a detailed study has been done on this aspect. When we talk about quality, entire ecosystem has got two components. One is regulatory driven system, and second is voluntary third party driven system. So as we see that, for example, in the case of civil aviation, there is a regulator called DGCA, which is responsible for compliances and to oversee the entire compliances with respect to defined law and regulations. At the same time, we have seen that there is a PPP model which is evolving across the globe, where third-party accreditation system and accreditation framework through certification or conformity assessment can support regulators to reduce their overburden and to reduce their oversee in terms of earlier bureaucratic approach. So this PPP model we have inducted in India as well in case of drone certification or CSUS scheme. So in this model, basically private third-party certification bodies which are being authorized by scheme owner, which is Quality Council of India in this case, work as a certification body. They assess the systems of manufacturers, they assess their documentation, they assess their processes, they assess their models specifications, and after assessment, they give a report which is called a statement of conformity. And on the basis of that statement of conformity, the regulator, which is DGCA in this case, is supposed to take decision on certification of type certification. So I can say that since the system is being developed as per the international standards, for example, this entire scheme has been developed on ISO 17065 standard, which is a global standard for product certification. At the same time, the certification criteria and certification process which has been defined in line with ISO 17067 standard, which is a guideline for product certification. So these standards gives this scheme a ample credibility in terms of global equivalence. As we are aware that India is also part of IF system through like NABL and NABCB. So we have got this linkage where our certification scheme can be endorsed up to a global level, and whatever certifications are being issued through this system can be equivalent to the international norms or standards or best practices. So this is all about this framework of this scheme, which has been designed and developed in accordance to multi-stakeholder engagement process, where all relevant stakeholders are engaged on a continuous basis. Number of meetings were conducted. A consensus was framed on the basis of a mutual understanding, whether it's a certification criteria, certification process, or some other requirements. And after due consensus, the scheme was published and released. And it has been seen that once the scheme was released, initially there were few challenges with respect to, for example, some certain testing requirements were new for the industry. But as those were the important and critical and significant requirements which cannot be ignored, so those were part of the certification scheme. At the same time, initially we could see that the level of documentation which was given to the certification bodies was not up to a matured level. And through lot of efforts from Quality Council of India, from DFI, from other stakeholders, we could create a initial level of sensitization among the industry, where industry is also evolving themselves to align their systems and process as per the scheme requirements. Still there are challenges, and the key challenges are for example, documentation is the one of the biggest challenge, where certain design documents, manuals, procedures and processes need to be prepared by the manufacturers. And we understand that the system is new and lot of startups are in the market. And we also understand that the prime focus of any startup is basically on business processes and business vision and systems. But at the same time, we have to also understand, as Omkar sir has also told, and Vipul has also talked about this, that if we would like to attain speed, scale, then we have to integrate quality along with speed and scale to attain sustainability. So if you would like to sustain our systems and processes and we want to be competitive in the global market, so we have to integrate all those four aspects. So I suppose this is a very great initiatives in the sector of civil aviations, and other sector will also like to replicate this system and model in their respective sectors. This entire process is digitized. There is a digital sky platform where any manufacturer can apply for type certificate. There are timelines defined for different phases of the certification process, and within 75 days it has been defined that the decision need to be taken by DGCA. 60 days has been given to certification body to do due diligence, and within 15 days DGCA has to take the decision on the type certificate. So entire process is time bound process. Entire process is very, very transparent process, and all those systems and processes are designed as per the feedback which we have received from all the stakeholders. Still, I can assure you that system is evolving. There are certain challenges. We are working with all the stakeholders, whether DFI, FICCI, or any other industry bodies, to resolve the initial teething troubles. And we are sure that shortly we will come up with the certain solutions on those aspects. And this system is going to be a success model for all other sectors as well. So these are my initial remarks.
Thank you, CS. Good to know about the updates of the scheme. I'll just want to pose a follow-up question. So you did mention about the certification scheme and the requirement of it and the entire perspective on cost of quality versus cost of good quality versus cost of poor quality. So before I jump in to just share another perspective about the startups, what has been the progress of the scheme? How many people have been certified? How many are in pipeline? If you could share all of that details briefly as well.
So from the yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So since the once the system is being implemented on DSP, total number of D1 form we have received around 170. Total 170 D1 form has been submitted till date on DSP. And out of those 170 forms, most of the forms were initially submitted, and those were rejected due to certain initial issues. For example, model specifications were not clear, or certain set of documents were not submitted. But right now, there are 5 type certificates have been issued. 9 statement of conformance has been submitted to DGCA for their decision on type certificate, and 22 applications or D1 forms which are under process with certification bodies. So right now there are 3 certification bodies which are being approved under the schemes. We have got 6 applications which we are working on for approval of certification bodies, and we are hoping that shortly we will get some new certificate or some more certificate will be issued by DGCA, because lot of I would say iterations are going on with respect to our efforts from certification bodies or manufacturers, and slowly we can see that this number can go to 2 digits.
Understood. So just to summarize, 5 drone models already certified, 9
Yes.
in pipeline with DGCA, and 22
are with certification bodies.
Yeah, with the certification body. We hope that these numbers can be processed as soon as possible, and these numbers increase multifold in the coming months or so. In fact, not months, maybe weeks. Just to sort of bring an additional perspective on the entire certification scheme. Now, most of the drone companies in the country, I'll talk about the large number and not the leaders. The leaders may be different, but a large number of companies that are into drones are startups, with a majority of the share with first-time entrepreneurs and young entrepreneurs, which essentially brings a few conclusions that most of them are still learning technology development as well as management of business on the go, because of the entire complexity in the drone business and the business itself being hardware plus software. And the second one is that none of them have ever gone through any quality assurance process or any testing process. Irrespective of that, the progress that the industry has made in the coming few months is something that is commendable. And while a lot of manufacturers or a lot of outsiders might comment by saying that, for an industry to grow, why do you need standards or why do you need certification? We can, sort of keep it open and keep it, give the industry freedom. But I think that's where 2 important points that my panelists mentioned come in. The first point that the panelists made was around why you need to have a minimum quality benchmark, and why minimum quality benchmark ensures reliability and safety by default. And by default, I mean the default that has been defined. If you are certified, automatically you meet the default. That's the first part. And the second part is, if there is a mandatory certification scheme, it forces everyone in some way or the other to think about quality, think about reliability, think about consistency, and think about documentation and design analysis and all of those things in detail from the beginning. Maybe for a few startups that may be very small, it may look like a hindrance. It may look like a very difficult process for some, that, if I can assemble a small drone, why do I need to undergo this entire very longish, complicated, sophisticated design analysis, laboratory testing procedure? But I think in the long run, it helps a person differentiate between a hobbyist or a simple assembler and graduate towards becoming a responsible manufacturer. I think the recent months and the experience with multiple manufacturers have taught us at least that not always freedom is something that is in the interest of the industry. Freedom could also mean an irresponsible independent manufacturer or an assembler assembling a drone and then sort of that unfortunately being crashed somewhere or unfortunately being misused somewhere, and overall sort of spoiling the credibility of the industry at large. So I mean, we talk about standardization and we talk about reliability and we talk about testing and certification. I wanted to bring in this perspective that sometimes it is okay to bring in standards and certification at very early, so that you can build in certain basic thought process of the industry from a quality focused way. So better to bring in quality standards and testing and certification very early on in the industry, in a very step by step manner, in a very gradual manner, I don't mean that you bring in a complicated process from day one and stop everything. But if it's a easy to understand process, slightly effort taking, and then graduating towards higher and higher quality, I think this is the only part in the entire regulatory and governance ecosystem where we need quality to or the certification process to keep getting stricter and stricter as time goes. Whereas in the licensing and the policy and the other aspect, we always advocate about the policy and the number of licenses to keep reduce as the technology matures. Whereas quality is the only sort of perspective of regulation or perspective of administration where it is good for the quality ecosystem to keep improve and keep getting stricter as the manufacturers keep attaining minimum quality year on year or period after period, version after version. So I think that's a very important point. And maybe I'll circle back to our panelists for some additional thoughts. Vipul, you've heard from Professor Omkar and CS Sharma, and you may have certain points to add on to, or you may want to sort of seek certain clarifications or counter their views. I'll give you the opportunity first and then go in a cycling manner.
Sure. No, that's, I think we are having a good discussion and all of us are on the same page when it comes to understanding the value of the standards and how they should be implemented. I think being part on the implementation side, both interacting with the customers, competing in the market, and then trying to meet the standards and also scale on the manufacturing. There is one thing which I have, or a couple of things which I have observed, which needs to be also taken care of in this journey, is that this is a very nascent industry and it is very early stage where we are trying to just give some bare minimum reliability to everything. And right now we are looking at the overall standards of the complete equipment. However, I think slowly we need to also decide the standards or reliability factors for subsystems or component level, that if a propeller has to be made or a motor has to be made, what should be the bare minimum standard which it should meet. Naturally, when the OEMs in India or anywhere else will start meeting those standards, the overall product will become successful, because I've seen people facing challenges because they selected a wrong OEM component and there is no means to validate whether that component will meet the final standard or not. And the onus of validating that comes on the final manufacturer rather than being assured by the OEM itself. Right. And some components may have dual use, triple use in other industries. Many of these drone components are very, very specific. For example, flight controller. If you're using a flight controller, what's your hardware standard? Is it going to get burned mid of the flight after certain flights or not? While there are checks and balances kept on the equipment level, but then all of these checks and balances fall on the shoulders of the final manufacturer, right? And sometimes one ends up with a problem statement where there is no OEM component itself available with those standards, but it is being asked in the overall standard. So that is where it becomes also important that the standard expectations should be set based on the availability in the market, because those availabilities can be gradually built. Only when you define that this is the OEM component standard which will be minimum expected, the manufacturing or process of creation of those kind of standard meeting components will start, and eventually it will be available for the equipment. So the final standard should be practical, because I have seen, at least while meeting the standard, a certain expectations could not be met because there was very limited option available for those components from very select OEMs outside India, primarily China. And there is hardly much flexibility available from such OEMs many times for small scale to offer the details of the design, so that a manufacturer like us can ascertain that yes, this component meets the standard what the certification scheme is looking for. So there comes a lot of long process. Sometimes these processes also don't exist with the labs out there, and ad hoc process has to be created, right? So I'm not saying it has to be done immediately, but that can be a gradual way of looking at it. Second thing is that since this is a very evolving, fast, very rapidly growing market, there is a consistent need to look at the next version of the standard, right? And have a outlook for next 3-4 years, right? That this is the 3-year outlook for the standards to evolve from a bare minimum perspective, and also give a tentative idea that when they will be notified. For example, I can predict that, okay, today we are not asking for redundancy on certain things, but since they are flight critical, if you make your drone beyond a certain weight, this may be asked, but it will not be asked more than 1 year ahead or less than 1 year ahead, so that people like us who are doing R&D, academia, and the people who are innovating today at a very, let's say, fundamental stage and will take another 18 months to put their product out in the market should know what is expected in the 18 months in the standards ecosystem. Because after you put 18 months and suddenly a new standard is notified, you end up getting to know that 50% or 30% or 20% of your effort have went in vain because a new standard has come which you can't meet in your design, right? So that is the second thing. And third and most important thing is everything is driven by demand. Everything is driven by demand in this industry. And we need to sensitize the user side of it more than the manufacturers to demand standard product and the standard outcome. Only then the need for standard and the hunger for standard will be created, and all of it, which is making awareness, creating awareness, making it more streamlined a process, or even creating a lot of intellectual resources, which is the lack of manpower today is what most of the certification bodies are suffering from when it comes to validating documents and understanding the standards from the holistic perspective. That will get resolved because there will be more demand in the market, demand only for standard. I still see a significant majority of business going to people who are giving low cost by compromising on the standards and certifications. And these standards need to evolve from only a hardware standard to also the output standard. Because when we say that drones have to be used, they are being used for certain purpose, right? The purpose sometimes can be only delivering medicine. The purpose can be mapping a particular area. The purpose can be spraying pesticide. The purpose can be only collecting video during some event or for crowd monitoring. Now, there has to be a certain standards or uptime which should be defined. For example, when we say cloud, you have to have 99 point certain percentage of uptime, right? Like those, that there has to be certain standards defined for the final output which the drone is generating, whether it is images, videos, dispatch of some goods, how it should be done, how successful it should be. Some boundaries should be defined so that when the consumption of these technologies are happening or the product is happening, it is happening for a certain outcome. People should know that what outcome to expect or demand, so that only standard products can get higher demand and preference in the market over the low standard product. And then the things which are deterrent to the standard adoption today can be removed slowly from the ecosystem. So these are some observations which I have, which we can always think upon, that how we can gradually answer these questions. Of course, it cannot be answered overnight, but there can be always a very systematic way of developing mechanisms and approaches and teams also to tackle these situations in the market.
Thanks, Vipul. That's very helpful for a lot of us to go back and think additionally on what more perspective is needed. Next, I move to Professor Omkar, and unlike Vipul, I'll request you to be slightly brief. We are having a paucity of time.
Yeah, I think I agree with Vipul. But in the BIS, we have considered most of these aspects, that it has to be futuristic also, and even subsystem level standardizations we have actually considered. That's why I would request the industry people to actively look at the standards work that we have already been doing and offer their further comments so that we can strengthen it very quickly and converge onto a standard. Now, if you look at the standards, you see one of the main difficulty is, there are a lot of these youngsters, as you rightly said, who are jumping into making drone companies, who are all essentially mostly BTech graduates. But if you look at the BTech syllabus, you hardly find any topic on standards. There is hardly any university I've seen where standards is being taught as an engineering subject. Therefore, it looks little alien to people that, oh, what is the standard they are talking when they actually come into the field. And also, it is a misconception that standards will inhibit your creativity. It is not so. In fact, whatever is your creativity, if you adhere to the format of the standards, you can quickly take it to market very easily. That's what they should realize. Otherwise, you see, the standard case that we always quote is the VHS versus Sony Max cassettes that they came in the early 90s. Sony had a very great quality, but they refused to fall into the standards which was universal. Therefore, they lost the race, although despite their quality was good, just because they did not adhere to the standard format, they lost the race with VHS. This is a very standard case study that we always quote. So this must be impressed upon all these youngsters. We should conduct more workshop. We should have a forum where we take it to the not only to the students level but also the entrepreneurs, so that the skill in India and make in India becomes more effective. So this is what I had to share with you. Standards, yes, we need to adhere to it. And there is a question in the chat box I saw from Ravi Kumar, whether we are in line with the other international bodies. Very much, sir. We are aligned to other international bodies. Not only that, even when it comes to the communications part of the drones, because that's also very important. We are actively engaged with the TDSI, that's the telecommunication standards body in India. We are actively engaged with us, and we have made a fairly elaborate standards considering all the components that has to go for the drone. And it's high time that yes, our team should interact with the industries. I request these forums of this nature. I think Smith is here and most of the leaders are here. So let us all get together, have a good interaction face to face if it's possible, and try to strengthen the standards and also ensure that educating people with standards, that is the stakeholders, is very, very important for the overall healthy growth of the industry for the country. Yes, Smith.
Thank you, Professor Omkar. Last word for CS Sharma, and then we move on to certain questions. Before that, to the audience, in case you have any questions, I'll request all of you to put it in the chat box. While CS is making his remark, in case you already have some thoughts in your mind, requesting all to mention your questions in the chat box, please. CS, over to you.
Thank you, Smith. So I totally agree with the comments of Dr. Omkar. That we have to take a balanced approach where we have to understand that this drone sector itself is a very vibrant, dynamic, and we have to take a risk-based approach where we have to understand that a bare minimum level of conformance to quality, safety, reliability, and security we have to ensure. And at the same time, we have to see that ample flexibility need to be given to industry to adopt those requirements which has been prescribed in the standards and quality criteria. And once industry get maturity up to that level of defined criteria, then we have to raise our bar accordingly. So if we take and follow this approach with a proper feedback system, where always we are ready to keep and a close watch what industry is saying, what industry is demanding, what is the expectation from regulator and policymaker, and if we can fulfill those appropriate requirements at appropriate time, I suppose our system will be very dynamic and will come across with the regular changes and frequent updates in our certification criteria for certification scheme as well. So we have to keep our system dynamic with respect to balanced representation of all the stakeholders, and I'm sure that if we can do that, we will get more maturity into this ecosystem as early as possible.
Thank you, CS. We now move on to questions from the audience. I'll request members of the audience, in case you have any queries with the panelists or queries at large on the drone space and the drone standard space specifically, we'll request you to post in the chat box. We'll be available for the next couple of minutes to answer all of your queries.
Smith, we have one question.
Sure.
You might want to take that. It's in the chat box.
I think one of the questions Professor Omkar already answered by Ravi
Yeah,
Kumar.
that question was
Yes.
Right. Yeah, there was one more just before that. You partially that was also answered, but in case, if you would
Yes.
like to
So
add
one
any
of the
additional
questions by
comments.
Pratik is, are there any specific requirements or notifications released by the government for using drones in highway or agriculture or construction industry? Vipul, maybe if you want to take this question, I'll rephrase the question a little. Are there any explicit notifications for sectoral use of drones in any of the industries?
Definitely. In some industries, there is a guideline that you may end up, or recommendation, and in some industry, there is a mandate to a certain extent. For example, if you talk about infrastructure for highways, NHAI has mandated that every road stretch should be kind of inspected using a video collected from drone, and that onus is on the concessionaire who's responsible to operate that section of the road. And there is a certain frequency defined, maybe it is, I think, quarterly frequency, at which that road has to be that road has to be inspected using video collecting drone. And the purpose of this is to see if the road condition is adequate or not. Similarly, there is a mandate in the mining industry also, which was notified very recently in, I think, April 22 itself, that earlier the status of mine progress was being reported using satellite maps. But over a period, the Indian Bureau of Mines realized that drone maps are far more reliable and accurate for such matters. So they notified the utilization of drone-based maps to submit the annual progress report for any mine which is larger than 50 hectares in size. So these are called MCDR guidelines. One can Google about the MCDR guidelines. So these are two use cases which I am aware of. These are where the mandate, the utilization of drone has been made mandatory. While there are a lot of recommendations and support from the government to use drones for agricultural spraying purpose, I think very recently Meghalaya government has also started a hub and spoke model of drone deliveries for emergency health supply with one of the startups in partnership. And then also there is a lot of utilization of drone which is happening for schemes like Swamitwa and large scale mapping, which is again part of the projects which are being done for a lot of public welfare, especially to solve land records problem. But these are not mandated as such, but they are, because drones are able to provide the best solution, they are being adopted. Thank you.
Thanks, Vipul.
Smith, just one information for all is that the agricultural standards are already published in the Gazette of India as the standards.
Thank you, Professor Omkar, for that update. Okay, so I think we don't have any further questions.
Yeah, we don't have.
Okay, we have one question. What is the frequency of compliance and recertification for the drone industry? CS, if you want to take that question. What is the validity of the type certificate that is issued? And
validity of this statement of
yes, please.
So right now this validity of statement of conformity is 5 years, and there is no provision of surveillance in between this duration. And after 5 years or before the expiry of this 5-year duration, definitely they have to apply for recertification.
Wonderful. So 5 years is the validity of the type certificate, and after that you can recertify or upgrade your model as deemed suitable.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's the end of the questions. Thank you so much, panelist. Professor Omkar, I think we have some last questions coming in. Members of the audience, I think last 60 seconds for you to post questions. After that, I hand it over back to Satish. There's one question on, is any training mandatory to operate a drone? I think let me clarify and let me take that question. So here's what drone rules of the country say in 2 minutes. So please start comparing the drone logically to a car. This is how I am going to explain how drone rules are in the country. So whenever, assume Maruti makes a new car, it has to undergo an entire testing and certification procedure once. After that, for example, Maruti Suzuki Swift Desire ZDI, the car is approved. Maruti is free to make 1 crore or 10 crore or how many ever cars they want of the same model, which means a manufacturer is required to undertake type certification procedure for each model that has been developed. After that, every time when Maruti sells a Maruti Suzuki Swift Desire, it has to be registered with the government, and each of that has a license plate. Similarly, all drones in the country need to be registered, and they need to be registered under the Digital Sky platform. It is like the drone's number plate or the registration plate. Of course, in the type certification procedure, if your drone is weighing 250 grams or low, the type certification is not required because it is considered as nano category drone. But for all drones that are beyond 250 grams, type certification is mandatory. For all drones, whether it is a toy drone or a nano drone or any class of drone, registration again is compulsory. Registration is available on Digital Sky platform. This is the analogy of the car. Now, anyone who is driving a car requires a driving license. Similarly, when you are operating a drone, you require a remote pilot certificate. Now, because driving is a old technology, it is assumed that anyone can teach anyone. It's very common, but drones is not. Hence, you don't just need to give an exam, but you also need to be trained from an approved training school, and then you get a remote pilot certificate. So one step more than the driving license. For driving license, a couple of years back, we used to just give an exam, and if you pass in the exam, you get a driving license. Here, you need to get trained, and then you give an exam. So training happens at a government approved remote pilot training organization, commonly known as drone training school. And after training, you get a remote pilot certificate, which is similar to a driving license for drones. After this, once you have an approved drone, which is registered, you get trained at an approved school, you get a remote pilot certificate or a drone training certificate. While operating, you need to have a third party liability insurance. Again, when you're driving a car, an insurance is required so that if you, in case you do a damage to any third party, you need to sort of cover that. Similar is the case for drones. At the end of all of this, in 90% of the Indian roads, you don't need any permission to drive from point A to point B. Let's say if I want to drive from my house to Professor Omkar's house, hopefully I don't need any permissions, and I will just, sort of go to Professor Omkar's house if he gives me the address, that is. And in 90% of the roads, you don't need any permission. You just take your car, it has to be registered, you need to have a driving license and insurance, and you can go. Similarly, in 90% of Indian airspace, which is the green zone, you don't need permission to fly drones up to 400 feet. In areas around the airport, which is about 12 kilometers around the airport, the zone is called as yellow zone. There you need permission from, again, the online platform Digital Sky. And for certain other areas like military installations or defense areas or Rashtrapati Bhavan or sensitive areas, they are defined as red zone. Even in those areas, if you want to fly, you require permission. So if someone wants to explain drone rules or the compliance of the drone ecosystem in basic sort of nature, this is how you sort of, comply with the rules, and this is, what the rules state. So I think that's it on the queries side. Thank you so much, panelists. Thank you, Professor Omkar, Mr. C.S. Sharma, and Vipul for joining in, and other members, Shripati IC and Satish, and other members from SAE for putting this together and contributing in whatever form and fashion. Standardization in drones is a very important subject, and overall the quality ecosystem, if developed early in the market, will help ensure that we have a robust manufacturing ecosystem, a quality-driven manufacturing ecosystem, and that does not just help the domestic industry but the global industry at large, because India then will have a very valid and a very large opportunity to contribute to global exports. That's it from my side. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. I hand over back to Satish for the further continuing of the session.
Thank you all.
Excellent, Smith. So nicely orchestrated panel discussion. So you have nicely brought out all the requirements and the challenges, well done. So thank you, Smith, Professor Omkar, Vipul, and Mr. C.S. Sharma. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So let's move on to the next talk. We are hearing about standards from last few hours, right? So, around 2.5 to, 2 to 2.5 hours. So if you're wondering about, how do you contribute in terms of developing these standards, either internationally or, locally. So that's the objective for the next talk. So we have Dr. Ravi Rajmani joining us to talk about how you could actually contribute to these standards. But before handing it over to Dr. Ravi, let me briefly introduce the speaker. So Dr. Ravi is an independent consultant and research professor at University of Connecticut and working on applying model-based design and data analytics techniques to aerospace and other complex systems. Dr. Ravi has 6 books to his name, in addition to many book chapters, journal papers, and conference proceedings, plus several patents. So Dr. Ravi is active in the PHM Society and within various SAE technical committees dealing with AI, digital transformation, prognostics and health management, and electric propulsion. He's currently serving as editor-in-chief of the SAE International Aerospace Journal and is part of the editorial board of 2 other journals. With that, Dr. Ravi, handing it over to you.
Hey, thanks, Satish. Can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Can you hear me? I guess you said yes, so you should be able to hear me.
Yes, had your video all clear, Dr. Ravi.
Okay, great. All right, I don't have too much time. The one good thing is I heard Dr. Omkar. He basically stole my thunder. So essentially what I'll be saying is repeating what he told you. And I too agree that it's unfortunate that they don't teach standards in school, in college. They should as part of the engineering curriculum, but we'll get to that later. All right. Okay, well, I'll talk briefly. I don't have that much time already. I think we are running a little late. Why should we care about standards? I'll give you some history of it. And ultimately, really, where do you come in? That's really what we'll talk about. I don't think we'll have time to go into what other organizations are doing. In fact, we won't go into what any organizations are doing, really. We'll just make a case that it's good for people to actually participate in standards development. That's the crux of this. So let's see, why standards? And if you notice, there are 2 kind of organizations featured here. The first is ASME. And this is, again, it's US based because a lot of the actual formalized standards were started in the US, except for certain other things which we'll go into in a bit. Between about the 5 years that you see there, 1898 to 1903, more than 1,000 people died in boiler explosions. So that is one of the motivations for ASME to come into being, to develop standards for design and testing of boilers. Interesting, where I live in Hartford, there is a Hartford Steam and Boiler, which is still continuing the legacy of actually ensuring people against boiler. And well, they've diversified, but that's how they started. So the second example is in 1904, there was the Great Baltimore Fire. And it had a devastating effect. It ruined a lot of a huge part of the city and resulted in the loss of many, many businesses. One of the problems was the reason why it didn't get extinguished that quickly, even though fire engines from all neighboring areas came, was because US at that time had different threads on the fire hydrants. So even though they had the equipment, they had the hoses, they couldn't actually attach it to the fire hydrants. So the National Bureau of Standards, NBS, which was actually established 3 years earlier, started working on standardizing these dimensions. That's an interesting sort of history of why standards are so important. The previous example as well as this. Interestingly, even though you see here that what was a fire hydrant in 1904 is sort of looks like this now, today, in different parts of the US, the threads are still not the same. So fire engines actually take couplers with them to join to be able to use their hoses. So that's an interesting little tidbit. But that's kind of the modern reason. I was looking at Wikipedia to see what was the first standard according to ANSI, which is a standards making organization. What is one of the first standards was not even human; it was pre-human. The Oldowan in Tanzania settlements. They had a way of actually making tools. These were pre-human sort of Homo erectus or Homo something else. No, it's Hibinus or something like that. 2.6 million years ago. And the reason and the reason they said that this is actually a standard is because the same way of making tools, of shattering this, was passed down from a generation to
Just a quick check. Is it only me who is missing the audio?
Even I'm not able to hear.
Where you have a standard of
Dr.
length.
Ravi.
Yes.
Dr. Ravi Rajmani, sorry to cut you. We couldn't hear you properly. Your audio was breaking sometimes in
I
between.
see. How is it? Is it better now?
This part was better. This sentence was better. Just before, just 1 minute before it was.
Closer to the microphone. Maybe that'll help.
Okay. Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's try that.
And I'll talk a little slower. So weights and measures are where, because you have to trade with others, you start seeing actual standards. This, by the way, is an Egyptian measure of a cubit, which is really the distance between your elbow and your middle finger, probably of one of the pharaohs there. And that has been engraved into a actual measure. So this is the beginning. And you notice that all ancient peoples, Egyptians, Mesopotamians, Indus Valley, they all had some form of standards. And that's really the beginning of standardization because of trade. But for aerospace, which is what we are talking about, it's not just interoperability like the threads or a particular length or a measure. Yes, those things are there, especially with materials. That's a big part of standards for aerospace. But really, what is much more important for us is the process. And a lot of our standards are based on the process. A lot of you are probably involved in ARP 4754, the certification process. I heard some of that in the UAM discussion earlier, US discussion earlier. Certification is really the key, where the standards development organizations and the regulators get together and develop guidance. But there is more to it than just the design and certification. We talked, I heard a lot of talk about type certification in India, etc., for drones. It is a lot more than that. It is, and I am really working on this a lot more than on the design and certification of design of the product, the process, and the operators. There is also the instructions for continued airworthiness. In other words, how do you get a certified product to continue to operate through its life cycle? That is really the key, which we don't, we really don't focus on that much. We are much more interested in the design. I think this is just as important. And one of the ways that the world regulators have figured it out is through this whole process called the Maintenance Review Board, which is this thing in the middle. The authorities are involved, the operators are involved, and the OEMs and the suppliers, and they come through and get this work done through what is a standardized way of maintaining aircraft, and that is the MSG process. I don't have time to go into details, but that's basically something that is just as important, in my opinion, probably even more so than the initial certification and the product process certification. So all I need to say is every aspect of aviation, current and future, will need standardization. And you can see some of these autonomous vehicles here, or well, autonomous and eVTOL and other vehicles, and they'll all have to go through standardization. I suspect that that will be one of the reasons that their entry into service will take much longer than all of these people believe that it will. The main part of the talk is this thing. Why should you care and why should you get into standards? You are setting the standards for the industry. That is so important, and it is actually, I won't talk about, I've been in this game for a long time. So a lot of these things come naturally to me. Talk to people like Ritesh, who's from FAA, who actually works with us on standards. Talk to people like Ravi Kumar, who's he's the ex, I guess the previous chair of the G31 Committee on Digital Standards for Aerospace. So talk to these people. They are the ones who have actually benefited from this. I can tell you that it is really important. You learn from the world's experts at a level you will not get in any textbook. You get to meet some of the most experienced engineers in the world in your specific field. Obviously, it's specific to what you're working on. And this is really important for your companies. You get first dibs at incorporating these standards in your products. I know personally companies that have actually benefited from this. They have sent engineers to work on standards making organizations. They write the standards. Their companies actually get to work on it first or use those standards first. Now, it is a pre-competitive landscape, so it is not unfair. If your competitor had sent their engineers to work on the standards, they would have got just the same advantages as you. So it is not, we're not playing any unfair games here. It's just something that comes naturally. And it gives you opportunities for leadership positions. Like I said, Ravi Kumar from Infosys has became a chair of one of the committees, international committees. It asked him about what a great leadership opportunity that was. But doing this as a volunteer, you have to convince your management to support this. I mean, none of us has the money to actually support this on our own, unless you are a consultant. Travel may be an issue for some companies. It is changing to some extent with virtual meetings, but people do like to meet each other and talk, and you get a lot more work done. So there is that issue. Management is always skeptical of this. I think Dr. Omkar also mentioned that management does not like to see people wasting their time on overhead activities. But if you can convince them that it is actually to the benefit of the company down the road, then it will be a benefit for you as well as your company. Now, SAE and other standards development organizations can help ease the way. They can write letters, they can explain why it's an important thing, but it's really your motivation and your perseverance that's going to come. So with that, I'll stop and I'll take some questions if we have any time, Satish.
Nice, excellent, Dr. Ravi. Thank you for the details and then showing both pros and challenges, associated, when somebody starts thinking about, okay, how could I contribute, right? So to the standards. So let me see if we have any specific questions.
Ritesh has been texting like crazy on the chat box. You should talk to Ritesh as well. He has a lot of experience in this area.
Okay. I don't see any specific questions coming from audience.
Well, I have a couple of minutes. Why don't I turn it over to Ravi Kumar and ask him to share his experience?
Absolutely. That's a great idea. Dr. Ravi Kumar.
I think
Yeah.
you have
You
summarized
think
it.
you could escape, Ravi?
Thank you, Ray. No, you have summarized it very well. Definitely, I agree with what Ravi mentioned. In fact, he's the one who has introduced me to the HM1. Okay, in the initial years, I had some starting problem, I could not spend that much time. But later I realized how important is it and also how valuable it is. Interacting with some of these stalwarts, probably you might have dreamt in your dreams, but sitting across the table and then discussing with them, it's a great opportunity, great motivation. In fact, that is the reason I thought each one of you should be part of one or the other. It's a great way to build competency in you and also uh, build the connects, the ecosystem connects, which are very, very important. All those people are like-minded people. Okay, so when you discuss with them, you will get a lot of value out of it. Okay, and at the end of the day, as an engineer, we all might have done certain things to make money, but we also need to contribute back to the society. And this is one way to contribute back to the society and great professional satisfaction that we all get. Okay, those are the few words from my side. Thank you, Ravi, for introducing me to SAE. I owe to you. Thank you.
You're
So
most
Dr.
welcome,
Ravi,
and you've done a great job, Ravi. We like everything you have done.
right. So Dr. Ravi and Dr. Ravi, we have, and we also have Ravi Shankar here.
That's
So,
right.
so just
This is a panel
just
only of Ravis. So Satish, you may
looks
have
like
to actually leave this very quickly.
looks like I'm the admin out here. So, so one quick question, to all of you, are any one of you. So now you actually contribute a lot, and you actually had seen benefits of doing this, either in terms of you getting into the standards, or you also giving back to the society, right, to the fraternity. But there are many youngsters in this call, right? So who just started their career, or maybe less than around 15 years, 5, 10, 15 years kind of thing. So if I have to just ask you one quick question, right? We are also out of time, but one quick question. When you started contributing to these standards, right? So what was your motivation? Why did you do that? Why did you get into that path?
Good question. And just like the people you talked about, I had no idea. And this is the key. My manager at that time was looking around for people who could substitute for him. So took me along with him to the first SAE E32 meeting. E32 is propulsion health management. I'm a propulsion guy. I'm a jet engines guy. So he took me with him to that, and it's for health management, and that's sort of the thing that we were doing at Pratt & Whitney at that time. He took me along with him. That was in 2003, before a lot of the people on this call might have been born. So, and that's when it started. It was happenstance, but I liked it. I liked the people that I was interacting with. And the other thing that that I did not say explicitly is you meet people who could be your next boss. In other words, if you, I didn't want to say it because one of the reasons that managers don't want to see their people go is because you might actually lose them. But that's the stupidest way to curtail somebody.
Yep.
You actually help everybody, including the industry, your employees, as well as yourself, if you encourage people to go out and talk about these things and contribute to activities like this. Sorry about that. Yeah. So that's how it was. It was pure luck, Satish.
Sure. Yeah, but then I think since then it's a long journey, right?
Yeah,
Giving,
yeah. I mean,
more and more.
I've been completely engaged for the last almost 20 years now in this.
Right. Excellent. Excellent. Dr. Ravi, anything that you want to add? Or Ravi Shankar, anything that you would like to add? Okay.
I was on mute. Yeah, yeah. I think that was a great question, Satish, from your side as to how you can encourage, people in the industry to come forward and contribute. It's essentially, in my view, I think people do it because they have a passion to contribute to the industry beyond, working inside a company. And it helps build networks. It gives you a sense of, achievement and joy. Beyond that, I don't think it is really possible to quantify it, but I think it is something that one does because somebody is extremely passionate about, contributing to the industry. That's my personal view.
I completely agree, Ravi Shankar. That is, you have to look beyond. If you think of your job as 9 to 5 and you go home, which is fine. I mean, that's perfectly okay. But if you have a mind which opens up to other things, then this is really something that you will like. And Ritesh asked, how can we as a BTech mechanical engineering student plan to contribute to this domain? As at the BTech level, it is going to be tough. I agree. You have way too much work. You have coursework. You have to do labs. You have to do all that stuff. However, if there is as Dr. Omkar said, if there is some kind of a course, not a full course, even a lecture or two on this, that would be great. And I think that might whet somebody's appetite to dig a little further. So yeah, I mean, that's all I can say.
Excellent.
That's
Yeah,
not
I really like the
Ritesh,
way
I'm sorry,
discussion
it is
is.
Rishikesh.
Yeah, I really like how this discussion is going, but I think we need to stop it here. Probably we'll find some other forum to continue or to have this discussion further. With that, thank you, Dr. Ravi. In fact, thank you all Ravis here. So now I invite Mr. Sripati, who is lead for aerospace and defense for Indo-Pacific at Hexagon, to propose vote of thanks. Sripati, over to you.
Thank you, Satish. I'll keep it very. I'm between the stomach and the dinner for all the attendees here. So, with all the thanks to Ravi Shankar Mysore, who drives all the SA India plans for us, we had a wonderful Aerothon 2022 last month, and we really have brought it to a good shape now with Aerostandards adhering to UAV segment in December right now, almost to the end of the year. So I think 2023 will be even more flourishing for us to really look at these systems. So without the support of the SAE India, of course, the entire team led by DDG, Mr. Venkatraj, it would not be easy to do that. So the entire office, has supported. So be it Vijay, Aisha, and Irango from the SAE office, bearing team, and well led by Venkatraj as well to help us on this. And we have the Davids, we have Mr. David Alexander and Mr. David Franks from SAE International, who delivered a wonderful session. And I think we really had a pragmatic session from them on standards for RPAs, applicable to the entire geographies. And Dr. Ravi's talk, along with Dinesh, has been insightful. Blockchain applied to unmanned. Of course, we are not calling it as unmanned right now. We call it as uncrewed because of the gender equality. So uncrewed systems. So we look at that particular session to be very interesting. So followed by Ritesh giving a session on FAA's approach towards the UAS standardization and way forward for the much more specific subsystem standardization by him. And of course, my closest to the heart was the panel discussion, which we discussed between me and Dr. Ravi. Of course, the entire session or the Aerostandards, it was a small call between us. So it really went well, was candid, and was connected to all the audience, I believe. And thanks to Dr. Omkar, Smiksha, Vipul, and of course, Sashwat Jain, who is not there today due to some inevitable reasons, but I thank him for accepting and maybe we'll see him in the next year's session on standards. So we also thank C.S. Sharma and of course Manish had been there along with him would have been great. But thanks for the entire QCI team to really help the drone enthusiasts today to adhere to the standardization. And his comments have been really useful for most of the entrepreneurship aspirants here to a serious plan for their organizations to start. So I also would like to thank Dinesh. Dinesh has been very actively involved as organizer plus mentor and also speaker today. So multifaceted Dinesh today was very candid again explaining on blockchain along with Dr. Ravi. So and all the Ravis today, I think we see Dr. R Square Consulting. One more Ravi is missing, so that will become R Square. So all the Ravis here were extremely helpful to the community of drone or UAS we talk as, and as well as with their immense experience by age and experience, but very, very young by thoughts. All of you have really made it easy for all the participants to understand the importance of standards. So with that, of course, Satish and I have been really good friends on stage, either online or offline. So it's a really pleasure to work with Satish on such events. So with that, I think from the entire SA India team, SA International, and all the participants, speakers, panelists, hearty congratulations and as well as thanks from our end. So with that, thank you all. Have a nice evening and see you all in the next event organized by SA India. Thank you.
Thank you, Shripati. Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. And last comment, Shripati has been pillar for this particular standards workshop. Shripati, thank you for that wonderful work. I know I have been bugging you all the day and night, especially the panel. Thank you for that wonderful work. Okay, thank you.
Thank you all for all the support. I think thoughts becoming reality is important. I think we have done it today again from Aerothon to this. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.